Shalom, brothers and sisters.
Shalom.
Shalom, 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 shalom. I am Bishop Taz, along here with Elder Ra'awaban of the House of Judah International Fellowship Church. And we are back again on another blessed Sabbath by the Most High with a Sabbath lesson. We're going to be going into the tribe of Dan, right? This is our part of our Children of Israel series. I believe this is part 9? We've been doing this for a little minute. We're in part 9 of our Children of Israel series, going into the tribe of Gad. First and foremost, we want to give all thanks and praise to the Most High, Ahaya, Bahashem Yeshaya, Warawak. For those who do not know the Hebrew, that is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Right. And I want to, before we got started, I want to, because we did praise for the first time in a little while, and I wanted to comment on that for the most part as to what I was feeling and what was going through my mind as that was happening. And one thing that's commonly forgotten and misunderstood is that we as Israelites are so prepared for war, but we forget that the first part, the beginning of war, begins where? In the spiritual realm, right? We battle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers and wickedness in high places, right? So having that understanding, where does our battle begin? It begins in the spirit realm, right? And how do we battle in the spirit realm? We battle with prayer, right? With praise of the Most High, with the worship of the Most High. So it all begins here, right? Nothing quite feels right until you begin to tap into the spiritual realm. It takes you to a different place, right? And a lot of people, we've been taught to be ashamed to go to that place. It's embarrassing to go to that place, right? And in the Christian church, you see all these theatrics and different things surrounding it to where it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel genuine, right? But you have to understand that spiritual warfare begins with praise, right? It begins there. You can't be ashamed to go into that place. Why? Because that's where the Most High is dealing with you.
Yeah, come on.
That's where he deals with you first. And I stated it with the elder, and I were talking about it, and we stated it in a conversation between the elders and some of the brothers. And I say the major part of the work, the first aspect of the work, where the work begins, is not in the book. It begins with worship and prayer. 80% of the work is worship and prayer. 20% is us in the scriptures. Right? Keep in mind, where were all the books when Christ was up on that mountain fasting? Where were all the books? They weren't present. It was time between he and the Most High, revelation, spiritual revelation. That was time directly being connected to the Most High. Right? Because keep in mind, they didn't have access to Bibles the same way that we do today. You had to go to the temple to get those. Right? So majority of the time, your connection, your relationship with the Most High, that begins your journey towards the Most High, and it begins your journey towards spiritual warfare and battling these principalities and powers. You can't do it with head knowledge. You don't do it by just reading the text. You do it by the spirit of that text. Right? So we can't be embarrassed to go to that place. Right? Especially not in our private time. We can't forget to do that in our private time. Right? So I diverted a little bit there, but going into the lesson and concerning the Children of Israel series, we began talking about the 12 tribes chart, right? Misconceptions and breaking down where that comes from and where the ideologies that concerning the 12 tribes chart, their origins according to the scriptures, right? Week 2, we broke down that we broke down the tribe of Reuben, right? We broke down the tribe of Reuben and how they are connected to the modern day Australian Aborigines, as well as some of the Native Americans here in the Western Hemisphere, mainly the Seminole Indians and a couple of stray tribes in the southern parts of the United States. Then in week 3, in part 3, we went and broke down the tribes of Simeon and Levi. Simeon being the Dominicans and island of Hispaniola, and Levi being the Haitians, or coming from what was Yoruba land in Africa, Benin and Togo, Nigeria, parts of Ghana, right? And then the week after that, we went into who? We went into the tribe of Judah. The tribe of Judah in North America, the brothers and sisters in North America scattered throughout the Caribbean islands, majority in Brazil, taken to Brazil, coming from areas like Angola, Senegambia, and Mali in Africa, right? Timbuktu for those who understand it and know it, right? And then we went and broke down the tribe of Zebulun, the Panamanians, and all the way down to areas Nicaragua, Guatemala, other places like that, as well as some of them being also in the eastern parts of Asia through slave trade. And then we went into the tribe of Issachar, same thing. A lot of them in the Philippines, a lot of them scattered throughout Southeast Asia, but primarily the Aztecs, the Mexicans, and some of the Native American tribes in Western America, Western North America, right? Then we went into the tribe of Dan, the lost tribe of Dan, right? Breaking them down to be the Lacedaemonians or the Spartans, or what we know today as the Gypsies, right? The Gypsies, right? Now, this week, a much anticipated lesson. A lot of people have been excited for this particular lesson this week. The tribe of Gad. Let's get right into it. I don't want to waste any more time. Let's get Genesis chapter 49, verse 19, brother Rob.
Alrighty. Genesis chapter 49, verse 19.
Mm-hmm.
Gad, a group shall overcome him.
A what?
A troop
shall overcome him.
But he shall overcome at the last.
Gad, a troop shall overcome him. Remember, what is Genesis 49? We've gone over this a couple of weeks. It's talking about the last days, right? Jacob says, "Come, my sons, that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days." We also broke down in a lesson concerning the calendar, the Hebrew calendar, that the last days did not begin until the advent or the birth of Christ, right? So upon Christ's birth, the last days began. So these particular prophecies concerning Gad and the other tribes is pertaining to after Christ was born, right? So when it says Gad, a troop shall overcome you, this is not talking about what happens to the tribe of Gad while they're in Israel, although it may pertain, right? Because Gad was overcome in the northern kingdom, right? So if they were overcome in the northern kingdom, of course, this prophecy would pertain to that. But what Jacob is talking about here pertains specifically to what's happening to the tribe of Gad in the last days, right? And there's also a lot of misconceptions about what them being overcome is and how they overcome at the last. See, the problem is people are thinking about the last being in this world. How many of you know that the children of Israel we don't attain salvation of this world? Ours comes after. Right? The Most High said that Jacob for Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning of it that follow it. So Gad doesn't overcome at the last until what? The last. But we're going to break that down as well. Gad's name means troop. And when you look at Gad's symbol, it's a military tent. And we're going to get into why that's a military tent. Let's get Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 20.
Deuteronomy 33:20.
Mm-hmm.
And of Gad, he said, "Blessed be he that enlargeth Gad.
Mm-hmm.
He dwelleth as a lion and teareth the arm with the crown of the head."
He dwell as a lion and teareth the arm with the crown of the head. Now we're going to get into more detail as to what that means. Because a lot of what Gad goes through, a lot of what Gad goes through throughout history, especially in the times of Israel, pertains to what this is talking about here, right? So Jacob tells Gad that in the last days, a troop or a band of raiders shall overcome him. He shall be destroyed by them, right? That means that they would be defeated in some sort of battle that would destroy them, right? But the battle itself is not over, right? How many of you have heard the phrase, "You won the battle, but not the war"? Right? How many of you know that we're at war? So at the end of this war, Gad overcomes at the end, right? Right. So it bears significance in a lot of different ways, right? Because he's prophesied to have an enormous role. But before I get into that role, let's finish Deuteronomy 33, verse 20.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he provided the first part for himself.
He provided the first part for himself. Read.
Because there, in a portion of the lawgiver, was he seated.
Now, this is interesting. This is interesting. Because how many of you, we all have the understanding that the Urim and the Thummim, or the priesthood, was given to Levi. So why is it stating here that the portion of a lawgiver was given to Gad? That's because, like I said, this is talking about the last days, right? So Gad, amongst his people and amongst others, would be regarded as a lawgiver. So that means that there should be a priesthood amongst the Gadites in the last days. Understood? So go ahead and continue reading. Go ahead and continue reading.
Was he seated?
Mm-hmm.
And he came with the heads of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord and his judgments with Israel.
So it says he came with the heads of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord. So he is enacting righteous law amongst his people, right? He's enacting righteous law amongst his people. He is enforcing it. He's acting as a judge, right? A lawgiver, right? So all of these particular passages, now I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle as it pertains to Gad, because there's so much information concerning him in the scriptures, right? And concerning this tribe in the scriptures. So I'm going to take a sort of an unorthodox way of breaking down the tribe of Gad, right? So we're going to be bouncing a little bit from here to there, but I'll make sure that we keep you on track, right? So this bears significance in a number of ways, since Gad is prophesied to have an enormous role in the last days as it pertains to the protection of the children of Israel and the remnant of those left behind by the wicked. Gad overcoming at the last. Once again, to fully understand what Jacob is trying to tell Gad, what he's prophesying concerning Gad, we have to understand who Gad was himself. For that, let's get the Testament of Gad, chapter 1, verse 2.
Testament of Gad.
The Testament of Gad, right here, right, by R.H. Charles. If you're going to get it, make sure you get the R.H. Charles translation. Go ahead and get that, brother.
Testament of Gad, chapter 1, verse 2.
Mm-hmm.
Hearken, my children. I was the 9th son born to Jacob,
Mm-hmm.
and I was valiant in keeping the flocks.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 3. Accordingly, I guarded at night the flock,
Mm-hmm.
and whoever the lion came, or the wolf, or any wild beast against the fold, I pursued it, and overtaking it, I seized his foot with my hand and hurled it about a stone throw, and so killed it.
So Gad was given the task of protecting the flock, not feeding the flock, right? He was given the specific task of protecting the flock. So whenever a predator came against the flock, it was his duty to protect them. So where do you sit, right? You're not sitting, Gad isn't sitting in the camp. He's sitting on the outer skirts of the camp, looking for danger, right? Why was Gad given this position? Because he was a fierce warrior, right? Gad was a fierce warrior who was tasked with protecting the flock. Now, once again, we went into this, I believe, in the last lesson. Jacob knew his sons so well, he was able to give them offices in which they could use their gifts to the best of their abilities. How he had Zebulun guarding the flocks in the winter, but fishing in the other seasons, right? How he had Issachar in agriculture and husbandry. He put them in areas where their gifts would exceed, where they would abound, where they would grow. So he knew Gad's ability was the ability to be able to live in nature, to battle, to do war, to protect, right? None of his brothers were more skilled than him as it pertained to protection and doing war. None of them. None of them measured to Gad in these particular areas as it pertains to war and being a fierce warrior, right? He was athletic. He had sheer strength, and the only one who matched him in terms of strength and athleticism was Judah, that of Judah. None of his other brothers rivaled him in any way other than Judah. So Jacob charged Gad with the protection of the flock back then, but he is also charging Gad with the protection of the children of Israel in the last days. So see how they all translate? How Gad, the task that was given to Gad by Jacob, the task that he had in the kingdom, and the task that he would have in the last days as well. They all carry over. How do we know this? We went into this in the Testament of Issachar. We went into this a couple of weeks ago in the Testament of Issachar. Let's get that. Testament of Issachar, chapter 1, verse 43.
Testament of Issachar, chapter 1, verse 43.
Mm-hmm.
And Levi and Judah were glorified by the Lord, even among the sons of Jacob. For the Lord gave them an inheritance, and to Levi he gave the priesthood, and to Judah the kingdom.
So he's establishing what was given to who. Why? Because Issachar was encouraging his sons not to go outside of the gift that the Most High gave them. Right? The office that they were given. We saw Dan leave his office. Dan wasn't tasked with being a judge. He took the position of a judge. Right? And we know what happened to him, right? Right? And you had the tribe of Manasseh acting as judges, acting as priests. That was not their office. The office that was given to Judah was the scepter, the kingship. The office that was given to Levi was the priesthood. The office that was given to Issachar was husbandry and agriculture. That's why he's telling his sons, do not neglect agriculture, do not neglect husbandry. This is what you were given. The gift that was given to you was the first fruits. But what was the gift that was given to Gad? Read.
And do ye therefore obey him, and walk in the singleness of your father. For unto Gad hath it been given to destroy the troops that are given unto Israel.
That are what?
That are coming unto Israel.
Right? So this was what was given to Gad. It was given to Gad to destroy the troops that are coming upon Israel. Not came, coming. This is a future prophecy. This is Gad's office, not only when they do become a larger tribe or nation, but in the last days as well. It was given to Gad to protect the children of Israel. Think about it. Judah needs protection. How powerful must this tribe have been to be given the task of protecting the tribe of Judah? Right? So it was given to Gad. And notice amongst Israel, they're like, yeah, we're gonna destroy this and that. Yeah, when Christ come back, we're gonna do. Nah, that wasn't given to you from the tribe of Judah. Levi, no, that wasn't given to you. That task is for Levi, it's for Gad. They're going to be doing the hunting. They're the ones going to be protecting our flank as they did in the land of Israel. This is no surprise, right? It shouldn't be a surprise because if you studied Gad in the Bible, you'll see that he's described as a fierce tribe in skill and valor in war. This is what they're known for. See, the Most High was very deliberate in the way that he set up the land of Israel, right? Because you had the land of Israel sitting on the coast. So they had the water to one side so they could see enemies coming from the water, but they had the Ammonites on their right or to the east, right? So if you have a lot of land to the east, that means that you have to protect your flank. You need a wall. Guess who they put right in the middle? Gad. And he wasn't even in the land of Israel. He was on the outside. He was on the outside of the river Jordan. So you had Jordan. You had to cross from the land of Israel over Jordan into the land of Gad, and you had Ammon far east. So Gad was placed in that position to protect the flank of the nation of Israel. You had Gad here. You had, I believe it was Gad, Simeon, and Reuben, who all had that side. And those three tribes were known for being the most fierce in battle. So see how deliberate the Most High was when he divided the land? That's why when he told Dan to take a particular position, he told him to take that position because I have a plan. The way that this is built, I built it this way for a reason. Right? So Gad is sitting here charged with the protection of the land of Israel, even back then. How do we know this? Let's get 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 18.
First Chronicles 5:18. The sons of Reuben and Gadites and half the tribe of Manasseh.
It was Manasseh. It was the tribe of Manasseh, Salakia, not Simeon. Manasseh actually beat up Simeon in the book of Jasher. So the sons of Reuben, the tribe of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. Because keep in mind, Manasseh had two parts. They had a greater land and they had a lesser land. So they had two parts of the land of Israel. They had two segregated lands, probably the biggest landmass in the land of Israel as you see it on the map. Right? So go ahead and read.
Tribe of Manasseh, of valiant men able to bear buckler and sword, and to shoot with bow, and skillful in war, were 440,703 score that went out to war.
So this was your primary source of protection and battle. These men, these three tribes were specifically given the duty of battle and war. Right? Valiant men, able to wear, they could not only fight with swords, but they could get you with the bow. They could create war strategies. And guess what? It was a whole lot of them. Right? And when you see these numbers, 40 and 40,703 score, keep in mind, the scriptures are going to tell you that one Gadite male accounts one of the least captains of the Gadite of the Gadite army. Accounts for 100 of any other nation. One of the greatest accounts for 1,000 of any other nation. So when you multiply that by this number of men that they had put together, and you wonder why nobody wanted to deal with us at our height. And keep in mind, Gad wasn't, you know, what they weren't shiny armor. They were in the mud. They dwelt like lions. That's what dwelling like lions means. They lived out in nature. They had tents. They weren't building cities and everything. They had tents. They were out in nature, ready to go to battle at any time they needed to. They were close and in touch with nature, right? That's why it calls them a lion. Let's get 1 Chronicles 12, verse 8.
1 Chronicles 12, verse 8. And of the Gadites, there separated themselves unto David, into the whole of the wilderness, men of might, and men of war fit for battle.
Now check out the way that they're described here. It says that they're wilderness men of might. Notice it calls them wilderness men. What makes them different from every other tribe? They are in nature. They're camping. They're building teepees instead of buildings. They're meeting in tents instead of buildings. They're living out in nature. So they're wilderness men of might. Why? Because if you want to do battle, you have to have some sense of an animal-like nature about you, right? Go ahead, and it says men of war fit for the battle. They're built to do war. That's literally what their physique, the way that they're built. They're literally built to fight in wars, to protect. Read.
Fit for the battle, that should handle shield and buckler, whose faces were like the faces of lions.
Whose faces were like the faces of lions. And this not only has to do with the way that they actually look, the way that their face is constructed, but also the look in their eye. How many of you seen the eye? What a lion's eyes look like? There's nothing there, right? There's a lot there, but there's nothing there at the same time. You don't know what they're gonna do to you in that moment. You're looking in their eyes and you don't know where the emotion is. Okay, is he intrigued by me? Does he want to kill me, or does he want to hug me? Right? Their faces are like the faces of lions. They're serious. They're serious and dangerous at the same time. Right? And also, Gadites also believed that the growth of their hair had to do with wisdom and strength, like Samson. So yes, they would let their hair grow long. Right? Read.
Like the faces of lions, and were as swift as the roes up upon the mountains.
They were fast. Very fast. When you read some of the stories about what George Washington's army, when he took them into the mountains to try to take to try to take their land, what they did to him. We're going to get into that. Right? Let's drop down to verse 14. What does it say about the sons of Gad? Read.
14. These were of the sons of Gad, captains of the host. Of one of the least was over 100, and the greatest over 1,000.
So it says this is of their captains. One of their least captains, one of their weakest, was 100, and one of their greatest was 1,000. Check this out. Read.
15. There are they that went over Jordan in the first month, when it had overflown all of its banks, and they put to flight all of them of the valleys, both toward the east and toward the west.
They came in, because keep in mind, David was at war. These nations have moved all the way up into the cities. They came in, they crossed over Jordan in the first month, and they cleared it out. They took care of everybody. They cleaned house. Think of Gad as the cavalry. Think of Gad as the cavalry. If somebody just so happened to bypass them, because keep in mind, ain't nobody going to try to pass through Gilead to get to us. They're going to try to go around you, right? So if anybody happens to get around Gad and get in, they were the cavalry. They would come in and clean house. Right? Keep calm. Gad is on the way. They were your Air Force, your Navy. They were everything that you needed in an army right there. And they were always ready to do battle. Everybody has that one part of their family that's just always ready to fight. No matter what, just give them a call and they're ready to come. They're ready. They're like, hey, all I needed was the call. I was already ready to go. Right? Hey, I don't got to pack nothing up. I don't got to pack nothing. Hey, let's just hit the road. We'll be up there about 10, 15 minutes. You're an hour away. They're like, we'll be up there in about 10, 15 minutes. Right? This is what Gad was to the children of Israel. Hey, we need y'all down here. You ain't said nothing but a word. Right? The tribe of Gad is described as dwelling as lions because of their closeness with nature and their unique ability to dominate their land and everything on the land, as lions in nature often do. There's very few things that can rival the power of lions. Very few things in their terrain. They dominate it, right? If you see lions somewhere, you know, all right, stay out of that area. Let's not go over there. Notice how it describes Judah as a lion's whelp, and it describes Dan as a lion's whelp. But here they say something completely different. They dwell as lions. They live like lions. Like, listen, I got nature, everything's out here, and I pretty much dominate everything that comes into my path. Right? They were built for living in extreme conditions, whether it be hot or cold, and they were comfortable with living off the land in wilderness areas as their forefathers did. They were hunters, right? The Chronicles also highlight their athleticism and their balance, right? That they received from their father Gad, right? These are all the things that describe. Gad said that he would take a lion, grab it by its foot, and dash it against a stone. Gad was powerful, right? Their faces being like lions is talking about the wild and fierce look in their eyes and actually having the visage or the facial structure of a lion, right? Let's get Jeremiah 49 verse 1. Why? Because remember, the name Gad means troop, right? And their symbol itself is a military tent. So of all the tribes, Gad was considered to be one of the finest in battle. This makes them being overcome of much more importance. That's probably something that everybody in this room was thinking. Okay, if Gad is so powerful, if Gad has so much military might and military savvy, they're built to do war, they're built to protect. How is it that they were overcome? See, there's a part in that prophecy that tells you how they were overcome. Remember where it said he teareth the arm with the crown of his head. That has to do with how they were overcome. See, when you're dealing with somebody of so much power and of so much might, you won't fight them straight up. Right? Yeah. You're going to bring a little something extra with you. All right, I got a gun in case he tried to get it. I got a gun, I got a knife, and let me make sure that I'm not in his territory, that he comes to me. I need all the advantage that I can get. Either that, or I'm going to just send somebody else. Try to give them food poisoning or something, You want to try to figure out a way to not engage that person head on, because you'll lose, right? This is what was done to destroy Gad. It's the only way you could destroy Gad. Let's get Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 1. Let's talk about what was particularly going on in this time. Read.
Jeremiah 49, verse 1. Concerning the Ammonites, thus said the Lord, hath Israel no sons? Has he no hair?
Has Israel no descendants? Is there no inheritance for these people? Is there no heir to the throne for Israel? This is the Most High speaking to the Ammonites. The Ammonites we know are the Jordanians today, right? Read.
No hair. Why then doth their king inherit Gad, and his people dwell in his cities?
Why are your people in my people's land? What? Hold up. This is the Most High's question. It's like, okay, is there no Israelites to inhabit that land? Does he have no one to inherit this land? I know there are. So why are you in their land, Ammon? The Jordanians are fighting over land that never belonged to them. It's saying, what are you doing in their land? Why are you dwelling in their cities? Read. Verse 2.
Verse 2. Therefore, behold the days to come, said the Lord, and I will cause an alarm of war to be heard in Rabbah of the Ammonites. And it shall be a desolate heap, and her daughters shall be burned with fire. Mm-hmm. Then shall Israel be heir unto them, and were with his hearers.
Then Israel shall be an heir.
An heir.
Mm-hmm.
Shall be an heir unto them, and that were his hearers.
All right. So it says here that the Most High is going to do war and destroy the Ammonites from off of Gad's land. It says, then they shall be burnt with fire, and Israel shall be heir unto them that were his heirs. So remember, what is that talking about? People who were in power over them will now be under them. What is this talking about? Gad overcoming at the last. This has nothing to do with what's going on this side of Christ's coming, Christ's second coming. This has to do on the other side of Christ's second coming. So those who are using this prophecy to say, well, those people can't be the tribe of Gad because they never overcame at the last. This is where understanding of prophecy is pivotal. It has nothing to do. We don't get our kingdom on this side. Dan got his kingdom on this side. And what happened to him? Dan got everything he ever wanted on this side. And guess what? He gets nothing on the other side. He can get in, but he doesn't get a seat at the Israelite table. So anyone who got theirs on this side, best believe they're not getting theirs on the other side. It won't happen. So this is talking about after Christ's coming. Because remember, we ain't supposed to go nowhere and go back into Israel. Who's supposed to lead us back? Christ. Christ leads us back into the land of Israel. It is by his power that Gad shall overcome at the last. Right? So Gad, so the tribe of Gad had their lands taken for a possession after the first destruction of the northern kingdom by Assyria. How many of you know that there were two separate times in which the northern kingdom was diminished? Right? There was a war prior to 721 BC. 721 BC was the final destruction of the northern kingdom, but it wasn't the first. right? So the Most High promises to judge the Jordanians or the Ammonites for taking possession of his people and their land, and promises to make them a possession of whom they made a possession of, right? Those who take into captivity shall go into captivity. They that kill with the sword shall be killed with the sword, right? An eye for an eye. Let's get 2 Kings chapter 15, verse 29 to prove that this was only the first of many attempts to diminish the northern land, the northern kingdom of Israel. Go ahead and read that.
2 Kings 15:29.
Mm-hmm.
In the days of Pekah, king of Israel, came Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and took Igan and Abel, Beth Makkah, and Jonah, and Kedesh, and Hazor, and Gilead.
And Gilead, right? Gilead is the land of Gad, right? Gilead is in the land of Gad. Read.
And Galilee, in the land of
Naphtali,
and carried them captive to Assyria.
So this is the first destruction of the northern kingdom. The tribe of Gad began to lose land due to King Hazael's conquest in 8041 BC. A little over 100 years before 721 BC, the final destruction of the land of Israel. So this was only the first conquest in which Gad began to lose land. It began to recede. So Gad's land on the other side of Jordan went from this to this, right? Ammon started encroaching on that land, right? Because keep in mind, Gad was right here. Ammon is right here. Ammon is right on the outside of Gad, of the land of Gad, right? It was after the final fall in 721 BC under Hoshea the king that Ammon took all of Gad's land for themselves and deported the Gadites to Assyria. So there was a permanent deportation of those who weren't enslaved by the Ammonites, though the others were deported to Assyria. How do we know that they parted the land? Right? But this is a scripture that we use often, right? So according to 2 Kings chapter 10, verse 32, King Hazael was the first to conquest in 841 BC, which was the beginning of Gad losing their land. So Ammon throughout history always wanted that land. Think about it. You know, it's like two kids get a bracelet. One of them gets a bracelet, and one of them looking like I wanted that bracelet so bad. I've been wanting that bracelet. And as soon as that person died, you just,
oh no,
what, they in the casket, you just got it. I've been wanting this for so long. This is Ammon, right? Ammon had been wanting the land of Gad for so long. You know what? Now that they're finally in sin and we can destroy them, let's just take a little bit at a time until the final fall where they were able to take all of it. Let's get Joel chapter 3, verse 2.
Joel chapter 3, verse 2. I will also gather all nations.
Read.
And bring with them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. And will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land.
So upon the destruction of the children of Israel, they deported them. They scattered them amongst the nations. They deported them, right? Just like we just read. And they did what? They parted the land. They said, Ammon, as soon as Ammon came to the round table and they said, all right, we defeated them, Ammon said, listen, I don't want, just give me all of Gad. That's all I want. I want everything from my land all the way to Jordan. That's what Ammon said. When they started parting the land after they deported the Gadites, they said, I want everything to Jordan. Right? So that's what the scripture was talking about when it says, Ammon, why are you dwelling in my people's cities?
Come on.
Why are you dwelling in my people's cities? Why are you in the land of Gad? Because that was the land that they wanted. They said, you know what? We don't want nothing else. Just give me everything to the Jordan River. Right? So we see, according to future prophecy from the Most High to Joel, that it was the nations who not only scattered the children of Israel by deporting them to different lands of captivity, but also deported them amongst themselves. They also parted the land amongst themselves, right? It was the Ammonites or the Jordanians who absorbed the land of Gad to the west, right? They said Ammon basically said, dibs. I got dibs on Gilead, right? So many would wonder how it is. We said this question a little bit earlier, how it is that such a noble and powerful nation in war was overcome. How can such powerful tribe be overcome by a weaker nation? The answer lies in prophecy, one that was given by Moses, right? Deuteronomy 33. Remember, it said that he would what? Tear his arm with the crown of his head, right? A treaty, right? It would be through treaties, attempting to make peace, attempting to make agreements that would be the destruction of Gad, that would be their downfall. David also talks about it too. Let's get Psalms chapter 55, verse 19. What is the character of these people whom Gad is making deals with? Go ahead and read Psalms 55 and 19.
Psalms 55 and 19.
Mm-hmm.
God shall hear and afflict them. Even he had abided of old. Salah, because they have no changes, therefore they fear not God.
These people fear not God. Read.
Verse 20. He hath put forth his hands against such as he be at peace with him.
He hath put forth his hands against such that be at peace with him. These are people that are not bothering them. It's like, hey, we're good. You're good. We're good. But instead of embracing that peace and allowing that peace to be peace, no, this nation wants more. So what do? They destroy them. They use that peace as a pretext for war. Read.
He hath broken his covenant. Verse 21.
He hath broken his what?
His covenant.
He hath broken his agreement. These are a people of broken promises. Right? You know what? I promise. You know what? I promise to do this, and I promise to do that. And every time they seem to make a promise, it's not looking. That promise ain't looking too convenient right now. It's not looking too lucrative right now. So let's wait till about 3 o'clock in the morning when everyone's asleep and burn all of their tents.
Back door.
With them in it. Read verse 21.
Verse 21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter.
The words of his mouth were smoother than butter. It sound real good. Yeah, we're gonna live here in perfect harmony. Everything's gonna be great. Everything's gonna be perfect. Right? Hey, we can. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California, right? We're gonna live here in harmony. Right? These are the words that are smooth like butter. It sounds real good. Write a song, write a poem with it. But what? Read.
Smoother than butter.
Mm-hmm.
But war was in his heart.
But war was in his heart. He ain't mean a word that came out of his mouth. He's already thinking about ways that he's going to destroy you. Yeah, sign this treaty. Everything's going to be perfect. Yeah, we're going to have this agreement and we're going to live in peace for 100 and for years to come, for generations to come. Meanwhile, he's thinking, all right, so we got the rifles and the muskets. What else? We got bombs. We got any bombs that we could throw at them? While he's making this peace treaty. Taking advantage of a people that believe in peace. See, that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand about the children of Israel is we were powerful. We had valor in war. We could do battle, but we admired peace. The children of Israel, we could do battle. We could war, but it wasn't always expedient. Israel wasn't a nation that was always at war because we could. This is the same spirit that Gad had. Gad wasn't, just because Gad could fight didn't mean he was going out fighting everybody. Right? Gad only came against people who came against him first. Self-defense, protecting what is yours. Right? And a lot of us have that mentality. It's like, listen, me and you good, but if you come against me or mines, we're gonna have a problem. This is the spirit that Gad and the children of Israel operated in. This is what this particular nation that David is talking about used to their advantage. These people don't like to go to war. So let's kill them with peace. Go ahead and read the rest of that.
But war was in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
His words were softer than oil, yet they drawn swords.
His words were softer than oil, but yet they drawn swords. Imagine that. They got a gun up like, yeah, let's be friends. Pointing a gun at you. Yeah, let's be friends. We're going to be friends, right? Yeah, me and you going to be real good friends we're going to be friends for generations to come. Meanwhile, they pointing a gun at your stomach. Gad's weakness would be trusting a nation that was not trustworthy. Who is this nation? Genesis chapter 27, verse, I believe 38. Go ahead and get that.
Genesis chapter 7, verse 38.
Mm-hmm.
And Esau said to his father, have you only one blessing, my father? Bless me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. So
Jacob had the birthright that was given to Jacob by Esau, that Esau sold his birthright to, was given to Jacob. And Esau didn't get a blessing. So he's like, hey, give me something. I need something. Come on now. I need something. What does Isaac say to his son? Read.
Verse 39. Then Isaac, his father, answered and said to him, behold, your dwelling shall be of the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above. By your sword you shall live.
By your sword you shall live. Read.
By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother.
So it's saying by your sword you shall live. That means that all that you gain, all the wars that you win, all the land that you acquire, all the wealth would have to come by what? The sword. You have one tool. That's the sword. Destruction, bloodshed. Now, it doesn't always have to be with a sword. There are many ways to destroy a people through war without ever drawing a sword. Esau, with everything that Esau would gain, keep in mind, he said that you shall dwell in the fatness of the earth. How did he gain that? How did he get it? Right? It says, by the sword you shall live. Right? Esau has a little man's complex. Right? They're small, so they feel like they need to compensate. Right? How do we know this? Obadiah literally says to Esau, we have made you small amongst the nations. They have one of the smallest populations on the planet Earth, but they seem to have made themselves to look as though they're the majority. How is that?
Come on.
You think about Germany, who do you think about? You think about white people, right? But if you actually go to Germany, it's more black people there. Same thing with Russia, right? They've made themselves in our minds to believe that they are majority, even though in actuality, Benjamin Franklin said so. Their population is too small. Benjamin Franklin said so himself. When he described the Germans, he described them as swarthy. Swarthy means dark-skinned. Right? He said, we can't have these other nations coming to the U.S. Our population is much too small. they can't have a stake in the American dream. Right? He was protecting what was already too little. Benjamin Franklin's worry was that we're such a small population, they're going to figure us out and take over. So you give the perception of large numbers, right? Think about Shaka Zulu. What did Shaka Zulu do? He would have a line that would circle around the army and they would clamp, right? You didn't have any idea how much numbers he had. He probably only had 15, 20 people. But to you, you thought that he had about 400, 500 by the way that they was coming at you. Perceived largeness of population as opposed to what's in reality. Right? So it's by Gad's downfall would be their treaties, trusting the untrustworthy and making treaties and agreements with Esau, with the enemy. Or who was the enemy. Right? So now, we've broken down in scripture who the tribe of Gad is. Right? Now, we're going to go through and we're going to break down who they are today and why. So, as we do every week, to identify Gad, we have to find these things. We must find these things. Number 1, the curses. Number 2, fierce warriors. Number 3, overcome by Esau, a troop, right? 4, they dwell as lions. 5, they have a face of a visage that resembles the lion, right? And another one that I just added on recently is they have to have a position of a lawgiver amongst their land, right? Let's get the history of the Indians by James Adair, 1775. Let's go ahead and get that.
History of the Indians by James Adair, 1775. The men are expert in use of firearms, in shooting the bow, in throwing the feathered dart and tomahawk into the flying enemy. They resemble the lynx.
They resemble the what?
The lynx.
So it says these men were experts in the use of firearms. Keep in mind, prior to the arrival of the Europeans in North America, there was no thought of firearms. The firearms were invented to destroy the tribe of Naphtali in the Hawaiian Islands. So there was no knowledge of firearms to the Native Americans, right? But they were experts in the use of them later on. Right? In shooting the bow, throwing the feathered dart, and tomahawk. Right? Anybody know what a tomahawk is? It's a certain type of axe. It's a specific type of axe. Right? But check this out. They resemble the lynx. Does anybody know what a lynx is? A lynx is a big cat, right? And they have facial features similar to that of a lion, right? So when James Adair talks about the visage of the Native Americans, he says that they have the face of a lynx. I'm pretty sure we heard that in the Chronicles. It says their faces were like the faces of lions. Elder, we have the picture of the face of the lion, right? For those, screen behind you and whoever's watching the stream on their phones, their facial structure, right? When you look at the high cheekbones, the elongated yet wide nose, the serious nature of their facial features, right? Look at the eyes. Remember how I said that you don't know what to, you look at the eyes of a lion and you don't really know what its intentions are. James Adair literally described them the same way that the scriptures describe Gad. Right? He says they resemble the lynx. Read.
They resemble the lynx with their sharp, penetrating black eyes.
Remember what we just spoke about as it pertains to their look? The way that they can almost look through you. right? The way a lion looks at you, but it's like, okay, it almost paralyzes you a little bit. When you lock eyes with an animal like an island, like a lion, you're paralyzed. It's like looking into an abyss. And that's when they strike, right? Keep in mind, that was like the nature of the Native Americans as well as it pertained to hunting. They would hide in trees and they would sit extremely still. But the second you locked eyes with one, you were finished. Read.
With sharp, penetrating black eyes, and are exceedingly swift of foot, especially in a long chase.
It says they're exceedingly swift of foot, especially in the long chase. Doesn't that sound exactly like First Chronicles? Doesn't that sound exactly like Chronicles as it described the tribe of Gad? It says this is First Chronicles 12 verse 8. It says of the Gadites they separated themselves unto David unto the hold to the wilderness men of might and men of war fit for battle that they could handle shield and buckler. Those faces whose faces were like the faces of lions and were swift as roes upon the mountains. James Adair literally describes them nearly word for word in modern terms, the way the scriptures describe the tribe of Gad. They were proficient in the use of pretty much every weapon. They had the look or the visage of a lion, but they were also extremely fast. You don't want to get in a foot race with these people or wind up trying to run from these people. If you're running from these people, you already lost. Right? You would prefer to see them before they see you. Right? So they were excellent in the use of the firearm and every weapon necessary to do battle. Right? So the origin of the Native Americans, they were also described, when you look at the original Native Americans, they were described as having dark skin, athletic and toned bodies like that of a black man. Right? The historical evidence rivals the excuses that for that the children of Israel, that they can't be the children of their dismissal of them being the children of Israel because of their complexion and height. Right? A lot of people who don't believe that the Native Americans are from the tribe of Gad, they say, well, they don't look like us. They don't look like us. Look at their skin complexion and look at their height. They're short. Right? Let's get the letter of Francis I.
Letter of Francis I, July 8th, 1524.
This was written in 1524. Go ahead and get that.
By Giovanni da Verrazzano. They are dark in color.
They are what in color?
They are dark in color.
Read.
Not unlike the Ethiopians.
Not unlike who?
The Ethiopians.
Read.
With thick black hair.
With what black hair?
Thick black hair.
With what black hair?
Thick black hair.
Read.
Not very long, tied behind the head like a small tail.
Like a small tail. Read.
As for the physique of these men, they were well proportioned, of medium height, a little taller than we are. They have broad chests, strong arms and legs. Other parts of the body are well composed. So
these are people who are dark skinned with thick black hair, dark skin, thick black hair, and their physique was like that of a black man. Broad chest and shoulders, strong arms and legs, right? And when you talk about medium height, when you're looking at the time about 1524, you're looking at an average height of between the same as it is today, about 5'6" to 5'7", and they were a little bit taller than that. So you're looking at about 5'8", 5'9", and up. Right? Sounds like the description of a black man to me. They are dark in color, not unlike the Ethiopians, with thick black hair and broad shoulders, broad chest and shoulders, strong arms and legs, and well proportioned. See, a lot of times we get caught up at looking at the aftermath, the aftermath of what the Native Americans were. as opposed to who they were according to the history, right? So when you actually look at this, keep in mind this was written in 1524. This is a little less than 100 years after 1492, less than 100 years after 1492, the proposed discovery of the United States of America. And the description is pretty jarring for those who would say, well, they don't look like us. We're going to come back. We're going to take a quick 4-minute break. Oh, not 4-minute break. We're going to take a quick break and then come back and get into the second half of this lesson. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. We are back. We are back. Okay. So basically what we just broke down, remember one of the things that we had as requirements as far as breaking down the tribe of Gad, one of the things that we had there was having the face or the visage of a lion. And the history already proves that the Native Americans fit that particular description. Even according to the naked eye, when you look at a Native American, they fit that description, right? But now you also have to take into account the customs of these Native Americans. And one thing that I wanted to address, specifically as it pertains to the Gadite presence in Africa, because a lot of people say, well, the tribe of Gad can't be the Native Americans because the tribe of Gad are in Africa. The tribe of Gad are in Africa, in South Africa. How many of y'all knew that there was a slave trade of the Native Americans that sent them to Africa? How many of y'all knew that? See, this is what happens when the history, when there's certain parts of history that are left unnoticed or unchecked. There were so many slave trades of our people, it's hard to keep track of exactly where we went. Right? Take a look at your screen. You're seeing a Native American on one side, and you're seeing a woman from the Zulu tribe in South Africa on the other.
Wow.
Tell me how closely they resemble. Almost can't tell them apart, can you? See, this is the problem when instead of actually delving into the history of why these tribes may be similar, or delving into the history of why there may be a Gadite presence in Africa, you decide to dismiss one over the other. See, I refuse to do the same thing because I know that the scriptures say that the 12 tribes of Israel are scattered where? Amongst all nations, the four corners of the earth. So I'm not going to dismiss one place where they could be, because we also know that not every tribe, not everyone that left after 721 BC left on ships. Some of them went back to their homeland. They went back to the northern kingdom. Some of them decided to go further east. Some of them decided to go further west. Some of them even crossed over into Africa. Right? Not everyone didn't leave and go to the Western Hemisphere. Right? So when we examine, I wanted to break that down quickly as for a lot of people who say, well, look, they have the crown of feathers too. Well, maybe they're Gad too. And we're going to find that Gad's slave trade was so extensive. There's places where the Gadites are that you probably never thought that they would be. A lot of people in this room and a lot of people watching this lesson online probably had no idea that Native Americans were sent by slave trade to Africa. Sent on ships to Africa. Right? And when we examine the Native Americans deeper as far as their customs and the way that they behaved, we find that the Native Americans had a lot of the customs of the Israelites. For example, you had some Native American tribes that wore crowns, right? They would wear a headpiece with a crown over it. There's some Gadite tribes in Japan that do the same thing. They wear the crown. Keep in mind, what does a mitri represent? A crown, right? The modest apparel of their women. They didn't allow their women to wear all kinds of revealing clothing. They had to be dressed and adorned a certain way, right? Fringes and tassels on all of their garments, right? Their booths, even the construction of their booths is the exact same way that we constructed our booths on the tabernacles in Israel, right? And this is what the Native Americans are known for. That's what they're recognized for. When you go to a museum and you see a Native American exhibit, what do you see? You see the tassels, you see the headpiece, you see the tent, the booths. These are things that they're known for, outright in front of you, right? These customs are also closely related. The customs of the Hebrews and of the Native Americans are so closely related that all historians, the most accredited historians in history, Garcia, Bertarini, Las Casas, Cortez, Clavigero, Sahagan, and Da Costa all agreed that they have to be from the lost tribes of Israel in the Americas. Not one of those major historians and explorers from back in that time disagreed that these people had to be from one of the lost tribes of Israel. They all firmly believed that upon seeing the Native Americans, that they had discovered a lost tribe. The Mormon religion began with this propaganda. They used it as a pretext to convert the Native Americans. Hey, you're an Israelite. Come be a Mormon. Even though he was teaching all kinds of wickedness behind closed doors. A racist doctrine against the very people that he claimed were Israelites. Let's get the History of the Indians by James Adair, page 13.
The History of the Indians by James Adair, page 13.
Mm-hmm.
From the most exact observations I could make in the long time I trade among the Indian Americans, I was forced to believe they lineally descended from the Israelites.
He said I was forced to believe. After years of trading, I was forced. I had no other choice but to believe that they were lineally descended from the Israelites. Not laterally, lineally. This doesn't mean, oh, there was a guy here and there that may have married into these people to make them technically Israelites. No, lineally, straight down from the Israelites. Why? Read.
Descended from the Israelites, either while they were a maritime power or soon after general captivity.
So it says they're lineally descended from the Israelites. How did they get here? Either by maritime power. Now, what does maritime power mean? Trading. They either got here by trading with people who are already present, or soon after a general captivity, a large captivity. Check out what he says. Read.
After general captivity. The later, however, is more probable.
The later, however, is more probable. He's saying that they most likely came here after a general captivity. Anybody have any ideas of what that captivity might have been? The Assyrian captivity. What did the children of Israel decide in second Esdras chapter 13? Let us go into a land where never mankind dwelt, that we may keep the laws that we had it previously kept in our own land. Right? Read.
Later, however, is more probable. This descent I shall endeavor to prove from their religious rite, civil and martial customs, their marriages, funeral ceremonies, manners, language, traditions, and variety of particulars.
Oh, but I thought they were savages. I thought they were an uncivilized people. It's a common story that's told about all of us, right? It's the same thing. It's the same story that they told about Judah in West Africa. Even though we were running some of the most powerful and wealthy empires on the planet at that time. I'm sorry, but something like Timbuktu can't exist. Timbuktu and Mansa Musa at its height can't exist amongst savages. That's impossible. Savages with no formal training or education can't build an empire like that. How about the Ghanaian Empire of the Ashanti? How about the Angolan Empire? The empires that once existed in Cameroon, Zimbabwe. Those don't happen with savages. It just doesn't. It requires a civilized and an educated people to do so. Right? It takes some level of intelligence to see a form of metal and make it a currency. That takes education and wit. So even the fact that they were trading gold and trading precious minerals shows that they had an idea of currency, which proves what? Education, knowledge. Right? So he says, in this book, I'm going to prove that their religious rites, what they believe religiously, their civil and martial customs, the way that their governments were run, their marriages, funeral ceremonies, which they practice burial, by the way. They make it seem as though all of the tribes practice burning, even though it was actually a small group that practiced burning bodies. It says that their manners, hospitality, their language, traditions, and a variety of particulars, fringes, stuff like the way that they dressed, right? A variety of particulars. But the core of who the Native Americans were was purely Israelite. Keep in mind, James Adair was not Native American. This was a white guy. This is probably Jewish, right? Who says, I see these people and it's easy to see that they're Israelites. I was forced to believe this, right? What might those customs that he was talking about have been? It is through a variety of texts, as well as the scriptures, that we not only find proof that the Native Americans are the tribe of Gad, but the other tribes also. By proving the tribe of Gad, we also prove that all the surrounding tribes are also Israel. That means going down to Issachar in Mexico. That means going down to Zebulun in Central America, even Asher down in South America. Why? Because all of these tribes were connected to the tribe of Gad in North America. How? How were they connected? Because of one of the prophecies that Moses gave to the tribe of Gad. What did he say? The portion of a lawgiver was given unto them, right? Anywhere Israel goes, what do we need? Priests. Notice everywhere Israel goes. See, and that's one of the issues with history, is that in history, they never want to acknowledge people that aren't of the ruling class as priests. They want to call them witch doctors. They want to call them shamans. Notice that. How come of any of these tribes of Israel that we found, they never refer to them as priests, even though they dress like priests, walk like priests, conducting themselves as priests? No, those are shamans. They're witch doctors. Because when you use the word priest, your mind automatically goes back to what? The Bible. They don't want to connect these people to the Bible. If you say priest, your mind automatically goes to the Bible. Let's get the view of the Hebrews. This is the view of the Hebrews by Ethan Smith, right? It talks about a series of different events that happened, not only involving Christopher Columbus, but the other tribes in the Americas as well. This is a good book to get for as far as studying the 12 tribes and the intricacies of everything. It talks about the language and everything. It goes deep into all the history concerning all of these tribes here in the Western Hemisphere. Right? So let's get that. Page 120 to 121. Go ahead and get that.
The View of the Hebrews by Ethan Smith, page 120 to 121.
Mm-hmm.
The thought naturally occurs that if these are the 10 tribes and they have preserved so many of their religious traditions, should we be likely to find among them some tradition of a tribe answering to the tribe of Levi?
So he said, if these people claim to be Israelites and and as I stated before, they've preserved so much of their history, they should have a priesthood among them. There should be a priesthood present. Remember, notice how every tribe that we've discovered so far has what among them? priests. Read.
If we should find something of this, the evidence of there being the tribes of Israel should indeed be more striking. Possibly this is furnished. The Mohawk tribe was held by other tribes in great reverence, and the other tribes round about them that had been accustomed to pay them an annual tribute.
Interesting. So you had this one tribe amongst all the tribes where they had a particular level of reverence, right? Because keep in mind, Native Americans, even though they weren't a warlike people, majority of the time they were at peace. But when they did go to war, it was usually over something like territory. So this particular tribe was off limits. We don't war with that tribe, the Mohawk, right? They were held in great reverence by the other tribes, and they were accustomed to pay them an annual tribute. What's that? Tithe. They had to bring a tithe to this tribe. Read. Oh, and it says the other tribes round about them. When you look at all of the areas that the view of the Hebrews is talking about, this goes down to even South America. So when it talks about these tribes paying tribute to them, it's not only the Native American tribes, it's all the other tribes too. So how is it that you have a people from a totally different area in geography traveling from their particular lands to pay tribute to the Mohawk? Remember, we examined in the lesson in Zebulun and the lesson in Issachar that there was trade happening between the Native Americans, between all of the Americas, even the islands in the Caribbean, right? They had markets that were filled with different things from all over the Americas. So it's not like they didn't have contact. But this particular tribe was held in great reverence by all of the rest of them. They were off limits. Read.
Mr. Boudinot gives the following account of them.
Boudinot, but
Boudinot gives the following account of them. Mr. Colden says he has been told by old men, Indians in New England, that when their Indians were at war formerly with the Mohawks, as soon as one Mohawk appeared, the Indians would rise a cry from hill to hill, a Mohawk, upon which all would flee as sheep before the wolf, without attempting to make the least resistance.
So when the Mohawk stepped on the scene, everybody scattered like roaches with the lights turned on. Right? Keep in mind, it's not because of war. It's because they revered them. Keep in mind, New England is Massachusetts, right? That particular area. Up north is north, right? So it says when one of them appeared, the natives would say, Mohawk, Mohawk, and everybody would scatter. You ain't gonna try to shoot a bow, a dart, nothing. Read.
Make the least resistance, and that all the nations around them have for many years entirely submitted to their advice.
They entirely submitted to their advice. Sounds like who? Sounds like Levite priest, right? Sounds like the priest, right? Read.
Submitted to their advice and paid them a yearly tribute. And the tributary nations dared not to make war or peace without the consent of Mohawks.
So even before you went to war or before you ended a war, you had to go to the Mohawk for permission. Who does that sound like? Sounds like the Levites, right? Keep in mind, the Spartans had the same thing. The Spartans didn't go and make war without getting permission from their priests. Right? Interesting, right? But keep in mind what the scripture said about Gad. It says that the portion of a lawgiver was given unto him. Why? Because when they crossed over from their land into this new land, they needed a priesthood. So Gad was given the position of priests among those nations, which is why all the surrounding areas, not just the Native Americans, paid tribute to them. Right? Interesting, right? Go ahead and read.
Consider Mohawks. Mr. Colden goes on to state an instance of their speech of the governors of Virginia, in which it appears the Mohawks were the correctors of the misdoings of the other tribes.
They were the correctors of the misdoings of the other tribes. If something was going wrong, if someone was lied on, if something went awry in some way, it was taken to the Mohawk so that they could resolve it. Sound familiar, right? Sounds a lot like Israel to me. Right? Even the king of Israel went to his priest or went to the prophet of his time. Read.
Now, could anything be found in their name which might be in allusion to the superiority of the tribe of Levi?
Now, keep in mind, this isn't the tribe of Levi, but this is a priesthood. Read.
We should think the evidence be very considerable that here are indeed the descendants of the part of that tribe which clave to the house of Israel.
Read.
And here too, evidence seems not whomly wanting. The Hebrew word
Mohek.
Thank you. Mohek signifies an interpreter of the law superior.
So the very name Mohawk means interpreter of the law superior. The name Mohawk itself is Hebrew, just like many of the names of states that we have are Hebrew. Mississippi, Hebrew. Ohio, Hebrew. Dakota, Hebrew. Lakota, Hebrew. Those are all Hebrew names, distortions of Hebrew, but Hebrew nonetheless. Read.
The law superior. We have then a new view of the possible origin of the Mohawks.
Interesting. The portion of a lawgiver was given unto him. And when you look at each tribe had not only a chief, but a subsidiary priest, or what the Europeans called a shaman. A shaman. How many of you all know that they had an elder councilship as well? Native Americans had councils of elders that would meet with other councils of elders. Sound familiar, right? No, but these people are savages. These people are savages. The Mohawk tribe dwelled in southeastern Canada to the northern New York State, primarily around Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River, held this Levitical office amongst the Native Americans for all of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. This tribe acted as a priesthood for every tribe throughout the Americas, including those that dwelt on islands, which the Native Americans also knew about and traded with. The Native Americans also had cities of refuge for those who accidentally or unknowingly committed crimes. Sounds familiar, right? Let's get the view of the Hebrews by Ethan Smith again.
The View of the Hebrews by Ethan Smith. Of one of these places of refuge, Mr. Baudouinot says, the town of refuge called Chouat is on a large stream of the Mississippi, 5 miles above where Fort London formerly stood. Here some years ago, a brave Englishman was protected after killing an Indian warrior in defense of his property. He told Mr. Adair that after some months' stay in his place of refuge, he intended to return on his house in the neighborhood, but the chiefs told him it would prove fatal to him.
So this Englishman murdered a Native American, an Indian, right? In protection and self-defense. So he fled to a land that was what we call a Switzerland, right? In a lot of Black neighborhoods and hoods, you have a Switzerland, right? Which is a place where it's a neutral zone, where no matter where you're affiliated, this is off limits. No shooting here, no fighting here, right? So that is something that is not new. That's something that originated in the land of Israel. we had many Switzerland. So if you committed a crime unknowingly or by accident, you fled to this particular land. Why? Because whoever you killed, their family was coming to get you. Right? So he fled to this land and he said, you know what? I'm going to stay here for a little while, but I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back home eventually. And the chief said, you better not. He said, you better not. Why? Read.
Fatal to him, so that he was obligated to continue there till he pacified the friends of the deceased by presence to their satisfaction.
So he said, you need to stay here because if you leave, these people are going to kill you. So you stay here and you have to figure out a way to please these people. Gifts, right? So that they can say, you know what? All right, we forgive you. You're good now. Right? Read.
Satisfaction. In the upper country of Muskegee,
yep.
Says Dr.
Boudinot
was an old beloved town called Quash, which is a place of safety for those who kill undesignatedly.
So this particular place was a place of refuge for people who killed someone by accident, undesignedly. Meaning you didn't plan it. It was an accident. If it was an accidental or if it was in self-defense, either way, you had to go to this place of refuge.
So like
because people, exactly, manslaughter. People would, because somebody would be coming to get you. This ain't like it is today where, you know, the cops coming. Nah, they whole crew coming to get you. It's like, all right, pack up the fam. We going to get this brother here. So you had to find your way to that city as quickly as possible. Right? Interesting, right? That's a Hebrew custom. Israelites had those. That's in the law. Native Americans also didn't have idols. How many of you knew that? But it's taught in history books that they had idols. Why are they teaching in history books that Native Americans had idols? Why do they teach in history books that they worshiped the sun, moon, and stars? Interesting, right? The Native Americans did not have idols, but they worshiped one great spirit and paid respect to nature as to nature and creation as Hebrews would. So they weren't worshiping the sun. They weren't worshiping plants and crops. They were giving their due honor and reverence to them, being that it was the creation of the great spirit or the one true God. So it was misinterpreted by the Europeans as crop worship or as animal worship when it was never about that in the first place. Let's get the view of the Hebrews again. Ethan Smith.
The View of the Hebrews by Ethan Smith. They were never known. Whoever mercenary Spanish writers may have written to the contrary. So it's saying they were never known. Whatever the mercenary Spanish writers have written to the contrary. So whatever they're saying opposite what I'm about to say is not true. Go ahead and read that again without the parentheses. So they were never known to pay. Read. They were never known to pay, to lease adoration to images or dead persons, to celestial luminaries, to evil spirits, or to any created beings, whatever.
So why are they teaching in history books that they were worshiping the sun, the moon, the stars, plants, trees? Wow. Ethan Smith says, whatever the mercenary Spanish writers may have written to the contrary, it's not true. They were never known by anyone to have idols, to worship luminaries, sun, moon, stars. They were never known to worship animals. Right? So notice he calls them mercenary Spanish writers. These were people who were hired killers, cleanse the land. They came in and they were murdering Native Americans, but they needed a reason to do so. Why? Because Spanish people went by the 3 G's: God, glory, and gold. So if you didn't have gold, you were dead. If there was no sense of glory in their eyes, you were murdered. And if you didn't serve their God, you were killed. But what's interesting is that they found all three. You found God, you found gold, and you also found glory. So they had no right to destroy these people, which is why Queen Isabella incarcerated Christopher Columbus for the last years of his life. How many of you knew that Christopher Columbus spent his last years in prison? They had to lie to the royalty in Spain so that they would have the religious and moral right to destroy them. This is why the mercenary Spanish writers wrote what they did about these people. But according to every other historian, they never found this anywhere in their history, anywhere in their customs. It said they didn't pay the least adoration to images or dead persons. So people talking about, oh yeah, they're Native Americans meeting with the dead and talking to the dead. Nah, they never did that. They never practiced astrology. They weren't necromancers. Right? It doesn't exist amongst them. It doesn't exist. They didn't worship devils and demons. It was never recorded in history. So why, when we look at Native American history in textbooks and according to the history that they've written, does it say that? It all goes into hiding a people. This is why brothers and sisters, when they're breaking down well, they can't be Israelites. They was worshiping animals and this and that. I'm like, listen, you haven't even taken the time to examine the history that was written. Keep in mind, you're going based off of history that lied about you too. So how are you going to say that this is an accredited source when the same accredited source lied to you about who you are? When they said that you were butt naked swinging from vines, had no society, didn't have a currency, had no idea or knowledge of being civil. Right. Those were lies that they told about us too. Yeah. So what makes you think that they would tell the truth about someone else that they've conquered? Come on. Continue.
Mr. Adair says the same and assures that none of the numerous tribes and nations from Hudson's Bay to the Mississippi have ever been known to attempt the formation of any image of God.
They had never created an idol. Notice in all those burial mounds, you find all these things in the burial mounds, even a tablet with the 10 Commandments on it. Never found one idol. Wow. Notice that they've never excavated an idol from the Native Americans before. They've never formed an image of God. Read. Dupratz was very intimate with the chief of those Indians called the Guardians of the Temple. The Guardians of the what? The Guardians of the Temple. The Guardians of the what? The Guardians of the Temple. These people were called the Guardians of the Temple. What was Gad prophesied to be? A protector of the flock. And these people called themselves, and where was the temple at? In Jerusalem. Where was Gad positioned? To protect Jerusalem, to protect Judah. So they literally called themselves the protectors of the temple. Wow. Read.
Very intimate with the chief of those Indians called the Guardians of the Temple near the Mississippi. He inquired of them the nature of their worship. The chief informed him that they worshiped the great and more perfect spirit and said, "He is so great and powerful that in the comparison with him, all others are nothing. He made all things that we see and all things that we cannot see."
Who does that sound like? Yeah. And then you find that majority of Native American tribes in their chants and in their powwows would say, Ahaya. Ahaya, 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 right? It was right there. And then you go to the Guardians of the Temple, and ask them, what is the nature of your worship? Who is your God? And they say, he is so great and powerful that in comparison, all others are nothing.
Wow.
And he made all things that we can see and that we cannot see. Who does that sound like to you?
Yes.
Read.
We cannot see. The chief went on to speak of God as having made little spirits called free servants, who also stand before the great spirit ready to do his will.
Sounds like angels, right? But notice he calls them free servants, meaning that they weren't bound to their tasks. They did their tasks willingly. So the Native Americans not only understood nature as the Most High created it, but they also understood celestial nature as the Most High created it. Read.
Great spirits ready to do his will.
Mm-hmm.
That the air is filled with spirits, some good, some bad, and that the bad have a chief who is more wicked than the rest.
So they also know about Lucifer. They also know about Lucifer. Interesting, right?
And this is all Ethan Smith. That's crazy. That's wild.
It says they knew about the Most High, number one. They knew about the angels. They knew about the angels, and they knew about demons. And they also knew about the chief of the wicked ones, Lucifer.
Come on.
Interesting, right? But these are savages. You're not going to find this in your textbook. Nah, they were just running around killing each other with darts and just wiping people out and destroying them. And, that's the history that we're taught about Native Americans. Not that they had one true God that they served. Nah, they had idols, is what they're saying. No, they had idols and all kinds. I came onto the land and behold, they were worshiping a bison. See, and this is what we can learn from the Native Americans. Their connection to nature. See, part of the reason why why the scriptures talk about them dwelling as a lion is because of their connection to nature itself. Their understanding of the nature's connection to the Most High. Understanding that an animal has a soul.
Come on.
When you kill an animal, there's a certain way that you have to do it. It's respectful. That animal is making a sacrifice because of a sin we committed.
Come on.
The Most High said he made the herbs for meat. We were never supposed to kill. Nothing didn't have, there was a time where things didn't have to die so we could live. Native Americans understood this. So when they killed an animal, they paid their respects and they did it in a way that was humane. See, we can learn a little bit from that. You don't really feel in touch with nature until you're in nature. To where you can look and say, wow, the Most High really created that. Man, look at this. Look at the height of this tree. Like, think about it. It's like, if you actually just go outside and look, like just go and look at nature that the Most High created. Look at pictures. Even if you don't travel, look at pictures. Look up pictures, Alaska. Look up pictures of Africa and Sierra Leone. Look where our brothers are now. Look at the Philippines, where Bishop Michael is from.
Or even beaches.
Even beaches. Just go to the beach and look. That's the Most High's creation. And there's a spirit governing every aspect of it.
Yes.
And it shows you not only the power of the Most High to create it,
Come on now.
but also how powerful he made us to have power over it.
Dominion. Yes. Hallelujah.
You pay respect to what the Most High created for us. Right? Animals have souls. Animals have feelings. They can be sad. They can be happy. They can be angry. There was a time when animals could speak. right? Imagine what animals today would say. Native Americans had understanding far beyond what we're dealing with now. Ronald Sanders confirms their belief in one God. And he highlighted it, and he highlighted it by the event of a Jewish man named Montezinos who identifies the natives as Hebrews. Right? So Ronald Sanders, who is a Jewish man, he writes about Montezinos, another Jewish man who admittedly comes to the revelation that the Native Americans are Hebrews. Let's get that. Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. This book is right here. Lost Tribes and Promised Lands, The Origin of American Racism by Ronald Sanders. Definitely a great book to get here. Right? The Lost Tribes and Promised Lands, The Origins of American Racism. Let's get page 364 to 365.
Lost Tribes and Promised Lands by Ronald Sanders, page 364 to 365. Revealing himself as a Jew, Montezino's proclaimed his conviction that Francisco's hidden people were of the same race as he. Would Francisco lead him to them?
Now, check this out. I'm going to go to this page in this book and show you something, because what's interesting is that this brother here, Montezinos, is just as wicked. This brother is just as wicked as they come. Now, he was in prison, right? And this is on page 34. He says, "Blessed be the name of the Lord." This is him praying. He says, "Blessed be the name of the Lord who made me not an idolater, a barbarian, a Negro, an Indian." When he stopped suddenly, those Indians, he told himself, they are Hebrews. Right? I have it highlighted right here. He says, "Blessed be the Lord who made me not an idolater, a barbarian, a Negro, an Indian." Interesting, right? I'm going to drop down to the next paragraph. Go ahead. Actually, go ahead and read again from the beginning. Revealing himself as a Jew.
Revealing himself as a Jew, Montezinos proclaimed his conviction that Francisco's hidden people were of the same race as he. Would Francisco lead him to them?
So he wanted to speak to the Native Americans, right? He wanted to speak to the Native Americans. He said, I want to go and have a conversation with these people who I believe to be Israelites. I want to confirm my suspicion. Let's drop down 2 paragraphs. The woman got off.
The woman got off and spoke to Francisco in an Indian tongue that Montezino could not understand, although he could then perceive that he was being identified in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
She then turned to her male companions to explain the situation. Upon hearing the words, they rose, went over to Montezino's in his utter astonishment, and said, "Shema Yeroso."
I got this part. I'll read this part.
Okay.
I'll read this part. It says, upon hearing her words, they rose, went over to Montezinos, and to his utter astonishment said, "Shema Yisrael, Adonai Elemihu, Adonai Echod," which in ancient Hebrew, keep in mind, at this time, they were not speaking the modern Hebrew. What they actually said to him was, "Shema Yasher Allah, Ahaya, Allahaya Nawa, Ahaya Akkad." Or in English, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." These Native Americans came to him and recited the Hebrew credo that we were commanded to say at all times. Why? What makes the children of Israel different from every other nation? We serve one God. We were the only monotheistic people on the planet Earth. And it was a reminder that we served one God, and that God brought us out of the land of Egypt. He's more powerful than every other God. So they came to him and they recited exactly what's written in the Holy Scriptures. Shema Yisrael Ahaya Allahaya Nawa Ahaya Akkad. In the English, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." Go ahead and read that. Go ahead and pick up from where it says the English of what it says.
The Lord our God is one.
Mm-hmm.
They had recited in Hebrew the fundamental credo of Judaism.
Read.
A brief conversation then ensued in their common ancestral tongue, according to Montezinos, whose fluency in it is almost perplexing to the reader of his narrative, as is that of his three mysterious new companions.
So he's revealed here. They go from just reciting the credo to having a full conversation in Hebrew with this man. But this is where his wickedness comes out. Go ahead and drop to only the sorcerers.
Only the sorcerers of his tribe had perceived that they were a special people and had been given warning that they should be left alone. The God of these children of Israel is the true God, they said, and everything inscribed in their tablets is true. At the end of the day, they will be lords of all the nations of earth.
So they even had an understanding of prophecy concerning who they were. Now notice it says only the sorcerers. Notice how it doesn't want to say priests.
Right.
I'm sorry, but you don't need to be a sorcerer to know that you're a special people.
Come on.
Especially after finding out that they had a priesthood. Not a group of sorcerers, a priesthood. Notice how they put sorcerer in there. I'm going to go up a little bit further. It says Francisco told Montezinos all he knew about these people from his own tradition. So Francisco is one of the Native Americans. And he says his ancestors, to their eternal shame, had indeed made war on them and persecuted them. But notice it says that they were a special people and had given warning that they should be left alone. He said, don't mess with us. Our God is powerful. Our God is more powerful than yours. We're a special people and we serve one true God. Leave us alone. He said, they said that everything inscribed on their tablets is true, and at the end of days, they should be lords of all the nations of the earth. What tablets? What tablets? See, when you look at the native tribes in the Western world, they carried not only their Hebrew traditions, but their religious traditions, but they also claim to have writings of tablets stating, which are now stating the laws and the history of their people on what we now know as the Decalogue Stone, the Bat Creek Stone, the Keystone, and the Los Lunas Decalogue Stone, all of which hold some biblical, are written in Hebrew. There's Hebrew inscribed on them, one of which, the Decalogue Stone, has the 10 Commandments written on it in Hebrew, found in the Native American burial ground. The Bat Creek Stone has a ton of prophecy written on it in Hebrew. The Keystone, same thing. The Los Lunas Decalogue Stone actually goes even further as it pertains to them supporting the Lions of Judah. Interesting, right? It says that they should be left alone, right? But check this out. Montezinos had turned his tale of the lost tribes into a bit of propaganda for the Dutch to conquest Brazil at the same time. See what he did there? He did the old bait and switch. He got them to tell him everything about their culture and about who they were, and he used it as a pretext to destroy their brothers and sisters in Brazil. And then would later turn around and destroy them as well. Just like Esau, right? Throughout history, to destroy a people who believed that they had peace with him. Keep in mind, it called him his 3 new companions. These were people who thought that they could trust him. But on the same token, he said, you know what? We can make some money off of these people. If they're really the Israelites that we know, if these are really the Hebrews that we know, they're some pretty good builders. They built these same Hebrews built the pyramids, right? These same Hebrews had some of the most lucrative farmland on the planet Earth. That one, we can use them. So he used it as a pretext to invade and destroy our brothers and sisters in Brazil. Interesting, right? We're going to take another quick break. Right? And we're going to come back and complete the lesson. All right? So one moment, we'll be back in a moment.
Take my hand, sometimes we all just need a friend. Call on me when you're tired and I'll pray with you. I'll pray with you. For together we rise, walking hand in hand to Zion. We will send our praises high and I'll pray with you. shall walk and not faint. You gotta believe in His word. And just learn to know that I'll pray with you.
All right, y'all, we are back for the last part of this particular lesson. I'm going to try to make it pretty swift. So I want to give a particular source that a lot of people can find this particular information on as well. The book is called A Star in the West by Elias Boudignon, which you heard quoted a lot in this particular, in a lot of the sources that we used. But he has a particular book specifically speaking to the Native Americans being from the lost tribes of Israel, namely Gad. So for those who are watching and want a particular and want an extra text, we didn't have time to put it in today because you already have quite a bit of a lengthy lesson going on here. So definitely check out A Star in the West by Elias Boudignon. That'll give you a lot more information as well as it pertains to the Native Americans being the tribe of Gad. Now, Many will wonder, if the Native Americans were so gifted in battle, how is it that they were destroyed by the Europeans, right? What would be perceived to be a weaker nation, right? Well, Genesis 49 says that a troop would overcome Gad, right? And the history shows us that there are 3 reasons why they would be destroyed by this particular troop, by the Europeans, right? The first reason is sickness. The natives hadn't yet built immunities to certain sicknesses that the Europeans brought with them. So what are we seeing? Biological warfare, right? The second reason is that the Europeans had updated methods of warfare as like guns, gunpowder, armors, and swords, all of which were unknown to the natives at this point in history. So they had a advantage as it pertains to weaponry, right? And lastly, the natives, although gifted warriors, often chose other methods of solving issues, such as treaties. So although they were brilliant warriors, they often preferred making peace. Those were the 3 things that the Europeans used to destroy our brothers and sisters, the Gadites, here in America. And we can see that through history as well. It was always those 3 things. It was one of those 3 things that the Europeans used to destroy the Native Americans or the Native Indians, right? The Native Americans rarely warred against each other, right? And if it was for territory. And they were often hospitable to strangers, right? So war was never their end all to be all. It was never their first resort to solving an issue, right? See, Esau is a cunning hunter, and he knew prophecy concerning Gad, just like Christopher Columbus knew the prophecy in 2nd Esdras chapter 2 and 2nd Esdras chapter 13. He used it to find the Native Americans, right? So they have understanding as to these tribes and what tribes they are and what their weaknesses are. See, the tearing the arm with the crown of the head, the Native Americans had an exact practice in which they took a feather from their crown and they would tear their arm or they would cut their hand and they would mingle the blood to signify themselves as blood brothers, right? So the Most High was not only directly referring to the Native Americans in that particular prophecy, but he was also alluding to the practice that would have in hand in destroying them. See, it was their desire for peace instead of war with the Europeans that often led to their downfall and their defeat in battle. See, Esau would use new technology, diseases, and the natives' natural resolve for peace against them. When we examine history, the Europeans have never won a battle against the Native Americans on an equal playing field. It's never happened. Look it up in history. When the Native Americans had guns and the Europeans had guns and they were on a level playing field, the Europeans never won. It's never happened, ever. And when I say ever, I mean ever. It's never happened. There's even been scenarios like I brought up with George Washington. When George Washington was attempting to go and take the land from the Native Americans, they were passing through the woods. Keep in mind, they had muskets. The Native Americans had bows and arrows. The Native Americans hid in the trees. And when George Washington's army passed through, they destroyed his army to the point to where the only one who returned was George Washington. George Washington was the only one who escaped that battle. So even when they didn't have guns, the Europeans, it wasn't a cakewalk taking these people out. Let's get Psalms 55, verse 19.
Psalms 55, verse 19. God shall hear and afflict them, even he that abideth of old. Selah, because they have no changes. Therefore, they fear not God.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 20. He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant. Verse 21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but the was in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords.
See, Esau would gain power through war and bloodshed, which we examined earlier. It is his cunning in areas such as these that he would be able to overcome the Native Americans on many separate occasions. Esau would never go straight up with the Native American, with the Gadite. He dare not. And when they did, they lost, and they lost badly. And when I say badly, I mean horribly. Right? Let's get Wikipedia list of United States treaties.
From 1778 to 1871, United States government entered into more than 500 treaties with the Native American tribes. All of the treaties have been violated in some way or outright broken by the U.S. government. Native Americans and First Nations people were still fighting for their treaty rights in federal courts and at United Nations.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to treaties, which are ratified by the U.S. Senate and signed by the U.S. President, there were also acts of Congress and executive orders which dealt with land agreements. The U.S. military and representatives of the tribe of subunit of a tribe signed documents which were understood at the time to be treaties rather than armistices, ceasefires, and truce.
So they used a technicality against the Native Americans. See, the Native Americans' understanding of a treaty is that there would be no war. It's peace between the two of us. The Europeans or the U.S. government said it's a treaty, not a ceasefire or a truce. So technically, I can make this treaty with you, but I can still come behind and kill you. He said it's an agreement. The treaty for us is an agreement. To you, it's agreement and it's peace. The European, and keep in mind, there were more than 500 treaties. A lot of people forget there were treaties that were made with the Native Americans upon their arrival in the United States, all of which were broken. Sound familiar? See, not only are we identifying Gad today, we're also identifying Esau. The Most High said he shall bring a nation upon thee swift as the eagle flieth in Deuteronomy 28. The Vatican is represented by the eagle, right? The United States has a big old eagle on its signet, right? Y'all are interesting, Esau. Y'all are interesting. But notice the pattern here. Even after the treaties were broken with the Native Americans continued to make them. Doesn't sound like a people who want to go to war to me. Doesn't sound like savages to me if they can negotiate peace. I'm sorry, but a savage can't negotiate peace. That's an oxymoron. That's opposite. Oh yeah, he's a savage, but they came and sat down. He laid out all the plans for how to make peace, and those savages. It's backwards. It's backwards. The natives, they use the natives' understanding, because keep in mind in the scriptures, a treaty is complete peace. When you make a treaty with somebody, according to the scriptures, it's peace. Esau used their knowledge of what a treaty is against them, their understanding of what it was against them. Well, it is a treaty, but technically that doesn't mean I can't kill you. To death do us part, right? So if I kill you, the agreement's off. That's the way Esau was looking at it. Yeah, words softer than oil. It sounded real good, but they're already drawing their swords. It's like, yeah, you sign that treaty. Peace. Yeah. It was because of these, because of the Europeans viewed a treaty as a temporary statement of terms that doesn't exclude the extermination of those signing the treaty as a resolution. So it's because of the of Esau or the U.S. government's thought of, well, technically the treaty doesn't say I can't kill you and take your land. The natives were blindsided and massacred while they slept, and their land was claimed by those who they had previously made the treaty with. Notice, if you look at a lot of those massacres, when did the U.S. Army move in? In the dead of night, when everyone was sleeping. Cowards is what we call that. They did the same thing to the tribe of Zebulun in Panama. When did they move in to Panama? I believe it was from 1989 to 1990. December 1989 to January 1990. They moved in after midnight when everyone was sleeping. Remember how I said, when you're dealing with somebody who you know can beat you head on, what do? You try to go around them, or you try to make the playing field as tilted towards you as possible. If they're sleeping, there's a good chance they're not going to fight back. They won't have time to fight back. Native Americans have been massacred and attacked more than 1,500 times by the order of the U.S. government under the guise of expanding civilization. They called it expanding civilization when they massacred a people. According to this is according to the Equal Justice Initiative.
Sad.
The worst being the most recent. The most recent massacre of the Native Americans was the most recent. The worst one was the most recent. President Lincoln ordered the largest genocide on American soil on the Native Americans after an uprising of a Sioux leader. The Sioux are a Native American tribe. Now keep in mind, Abraham Lincoln ordered for this genocide of the Native Americans days after he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. So he went from so-called freeing slaves to committing the largest genocide on the Native Americans. And he also swore that blacks would never have equal rights to whites. So don't get it twisted. Abraham Lincoln was still a racist. Don't get that twisted. Abraham Lincoln was very much racist. But he knew that if he removed slavery from the United States Constitution, that the South, who depended on slave labor, would be crippled and could not secede from the Union. He was doing everything in his power to keep the South from seceding from the Union. That's why he eliminated slavery, not because of a moral conscience. See, the U.S. Army, now the reason why the Sioux had an uprising in the first place is because the U.S. government broke yet another treaty that promised them food and supplies in exchange for land. So the natives said, if we give you land, you give us food and supplies. But the U.S. never fulfilled their end of the bargain, which caused the natives to starve. What do hungry people do? Hungry people lose their minds, right? Hungry people lose their minds. The U.S. responded saying, let them eat grass. That's your president, Abraham Lincoln, with the moral conscience. In response to the Native Americans starving because of a broken treaty on their end, they said, you know what? Let them eat grass. If you're hungry, eat some grass like cattle. Abraham Lincoln, shortly after signing the Emancipation Proclamation, ordered for the murder of 303 natives, and 400 were captured. All but 38 were spared. So they killed 303, took 400 captive, and all but 38 of that 400 were spared. Just murdered them because of a treaty that they broke. There was also Wounded Knee. How many of you know about Wounded Knee? We learned about this in school. Wounded Knee, the U.S. military killed 300 Sioux men, women, and children who protested after their chief was murdered during an unprovoked arrest. For a little bit more details of what happened here, the Native Americans, or the Sioux tribe, were doing a tribal dance, a powwow, as some people call it. They were doing a tribal dance, which they had always done, but apparently their army perceived it as a war dance. They perceived it as a war dance and attempted to take the Sioux chief into custody, killing him while trying to do so. Sounds similar. Doesn't that sound interesting? George Floyd. How many black men have been accidentally killed while being taken into custody? Oh, but black people have a monopoly on suffering. Now, they killed 300 men, women, and children. Babies were killed at Wounded Knee. Why? Oh yeah, a baby's gonna can really do some damage to a military. Yeah. Yeah, a baby's gonna do some real damage to a 40-year-old military man. Interesting, right? However, when the Native Americans finally got their hands on modern firepower, they never looked back. And it was nearly impossible for them to be overcome in battle. Gun culture, as we know it today, was invented by them, and the world's first major munitions trade was started by them. How many of you knew that? You know the idea of gun clubs and carrying guns, having a gun holster and the t-shirts and all. That started, Native Americans started that. That's another thing that was stolen by whites. A lot of people think that gun culture was invented by whites. People think rednecks, right? Oh yeah, gun culture, that's them. No, gun culture was Native Americans. Let's prove it. This is sheer.org in an article entitled Firearms and the Violent Transformation of Native America. Go ahead and read that.
Natives eagerly sought firearms, not because they were dazzled by the technology. Rather, they relied on differential accesses to guns, had become key determinant in the rise of some native peoples and vulnerability of others to captivity, enslavement, and dispossession. Horseback raiding and death. Specifically, the Five Nations Iroquois.
Of the Iroquois, yeah.
Five Nations of the Iroquois, the slave raiding tribes of the Southwest, Westos, Savannahs, Creeks, and Chickasaws. The Osages of the Missouri and Mississippi confluence. Mm-hmm. The Monakas of the Southern Plains and the Blackfoot of the Northern Plains and Rocky Mountain West. The Nukas of Vancouver Island, and Sitka Tinglets of the
Sitka Tinglets
of the Alaskan Panhandle.
So these Native American tribes sought firearms not because they were dazzled by the technology, but because they needed them to protect their families. They said, okay, we're noticing that tribes without guns and firearms are more likely to like you said, get murdered off the map or get taken into slavery. So they said, listen, we need to get some guns to level this playing field, to protect ourselves. This included all the five Iroquois and the slave raiding tribes of the Southeast, which is the Westos, Savannahs, Creeks, and Chickasaws. And you even had the Comanches, who we're going to get into, because the Comanches were something different. When you want to talk about the epitome of who God was in Israel, the Comanches are it. And you have the Blackfoot of the Northern Plains closer to Canada, and the Nootkas of Vancouver, and the Sitka Linglets of the Alaskan Panhandle. So you can see just how far the Native Americans stretched throughout these particular areas. Go ahead and read the next part. Learning to make basic gun repairs and mode headshot. Never mind shooting guns accurately. Join the list of things a native man needed to know. So basically, becoming well equipped and having a well equipped knowledge of weaponry virtually became like reading the Bible for an Israelite. It became one of the things that you need to know. Just like they taught their children how to throw a tomahawk, how to ride a horse. They taught their children how to not only make lead shots, create bullets, make gun repairs, even shooting them accurately. So they became masters of weaponry, of guns. Right? Read.
By contrast, Native women rarely used firearms, even when their lives were in peril, based on the principle that women were meant to give and sustain life, but not take it.
Sounds Israelite, doesn't it? Women weren't allowed in Israelite armies, right? They weren't allowed in Israelite armies. That was for a reason, right? And it was the same thing for the Native Americans. Now, what you're going to see is their women did have a role in the gun trade, but their goal was not to fire them.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and read. Check this out. Read.
However, women did participate in the material culture of firearms, using their expertise in leatherworking, sewing, and beadwork to produce gun bags, ammunition, pouches, and wore shirts.
So the women were actually the creators of modern day gun culture. Holsters, gun sheaths. All this stuff was invented by the Native American woman. Right? So they had their role, but they didn't confuse their role with what the Native men were dealing with. That's biblical. Right? That's biblical. The men shot the guns. The women made everything for the guns. It's like, all right, yeah, the men are over here putting together bullets, molding bullets, and making repairs on guns, and the women are over there creating the gun. Hey, does this fit? All right, yeah. They were doing this together, right? But there was order and there was harmony amongst it. It wasn't the woman saying, well, I should be able to shoot a gun. Right? I want to shoot a gun. I want to do this. I want to do that. Now, obviously, our women today, it's a little bit different of a situation. Protection. But as it pertains to the man is in charge of protecting his household. If the woman has to stand up and protect herself, where is your man at? Because there's a problem. A woman should be able to protect herself, absolutely. But if she has to, there's a problem. Because that's what her man is for. That's what a man is for. That's what the father is for. So if a woman say, well, I had to, well, my question would be, where's your father? Where's your husband? Because they're not doing their job. Right? So gun culture, as well as the mastery of guns, began with Native Americans. When you watch John Wick and you're seeing all these cool gun moves and stuff like that, that started with Native Americans. That gun culture was created by them. Read.
This history of guns in Indian country demonstrates how indigenous people...
go back to these were the ways of expressing.
Oh, these were the new ways of expressing long-standing gender roles.
Mm-hmm.
This history of guns in Indian culture demonstrates how indigenous people use firearms to reshape their world using the age of colonialism.
Mm-hmm. So they adapted. The Native American savages, do savages adapt? Savages that aren't intelligent. They aren't intelligent. They aren't They don't have any kind of basis of society. Can they adapt? But not only did they adapt, but see how they adapted. Read.
Reshape their world using the age of colonialism. Some natives, for greater or lesser periods of time, use guns to accumulate wealth, power, and honors, which is to say, to become ascendant. Such stories offer an important counterpoint to still widespread assumption that First Nations generally plunged into a downward trajectory of death, land loss, and impoverishment at contact with Euro-Americans.
So basically, the narrative is that the Native Americans, after meeting the Europeans, just plunged into the desolate heap of nothingness. The Native Americans built an empire based off of munitions. They were the first munitions trade. You know, the gun trade that we talk about? That started with Native Americans. They were funding both sides of wars. When you talk about the Mexican American wars, when you talk about the wars between Spain and the U.S., the U.S. and France, guess who was providing the guns? They had to go to the Native Americans for weapons. Right? Go ahead and read.
Thundersticks challenges the notion that a disadvantage in arms somehow accounts for indigenous peoples' ultimate subjugation to Euro-American authority. Native economic power, business sense, and political savvy determined that was not the case.
Oh, but these are savages. They didn't use currency. They didn't have a god. They worshipped idols. They were just running around killing each other. Economic power, business sense, and political savvy. Sound like a savage to you? Does it sound like savage? It don't sound like a savage to me. Native Americans were not only responsible for the invention of the munitions trading, but they also invented the gun culture that we see amongst whites today. A lot of methods that are used by the mob and the mafia, even amongst gangs, comes from the Native Americans, how they did business with arms dealing. Where if they made a trade with you in good faith and you said that you're going to pay them later and you didn't, they would come to get you. Notice how you watch those movies with the casinos in areas like Arizona and New Mexico, and there's and all of it's Native American, and it's like a mafia in there. Yeah, no, that's as old as time right there. They've been doing that for a long time. Like, listen, I gave you these guns in good faith. If you don't pay me, I'm gonna send somebody out there to take you out. The mob got it from them. Many tribes prior to the arrival of foreigners were peaceful, having no need for warlike tendencies. However, many of the tribes who remained after being massacred or killed through disease or by disease adapted and became fierce warriors. So the warlike aspects of the Native American tribes wasn't always the case. But when they realized that they needed to, they made a quick change. They went from peaceful to warlike real quick. People just made it seem like the history makes it seem as though the Europeans came and they were just already just riled up, ready to kill. No, they were peaceful. Mostly, you had a lot of hunter-gatherer tribes, right? And they had to transition and change into a tribe that could fight, that could go to war. The Apache, the Sioux, the Blackfoot, and the Kiowa were some of the most feared and dangerous tribes of all the European settlers. So these were some of the most dangerous tribes that the Europeans didn't really want to deal with. However, the Comanche were by far the most feared and most powerful Gadite tribe in North America, the Comanche, being that they defeated nearly all of the previously listed tribes and battled on the regular basis. They were also dubbed as the Lord of the Plains, the Lords of the Plains. So think about the Comanche were prior to the arrival of the Europeans, the Comanche had no warlike tendencies. They're completely peaceful. War was not in their culture. They were a hunter-gathering tribe. But after the arrival of the Europeans, they became the most powerful. They became the most powerful warriors amongst all Native Americans throughout the U.S. and South America. Nobody could deal with them. No army throughout the Americas could deal with the Comanche tribe or the Lords of the Plains. The Comanche received horses and found ways to battle with them in ways no one else had ever done. We actually have pictures. We actually have pictures of that to show what they were doing with these horses that was completely different, right? So the Comanche received horses and found ways to battle with them in ways no one had ever done before, right? So if you look at this picture here, this is them at war with another Native tribe. Notice how one of the Native Americans in the front of the picture is leaning on the side of the horse, hanging on to the side of the horse with the horse going full speed to protect himself from oncoming arrows while also still being able to shoot. So think about it like being in a car and one person driving and another person leaning out, shooting out of the window. That was invented by them. This was something that had never been done by any other Native tribe. The Comanche invented that. So they were able to take the horse and turn it into a weapon in and of itself. Right? They spread and conquered. They would conquer and absorb innovations and change their approach. It sound like savages to you? Every time they conquered a tribe, they would take what that tribe did better and add it to their own culture. Right? And they would change their approach to how they did battle and how they attacked every single time. Was never the same. So you can never say, oh, this is what they're going to do, because they change their approach every time. Sound familiar? Sounds like the tribe of Gad to me. That's the way they did battle. Over 150 years, the Comanche tribe covered over 250,000 square miles, including Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Texas. All their land. This doesn't include the other 20 tribes that acknowledge Comanche supremacy. So they had all of this land that comprised of what, 5 states? And they also had 20 other Native American tribes that was like, listen, whatever you want, I got you. As long as you don't come and destroy us, you know what? You have supremacy. You good. So this Native American tribe basically had dominion over pretty much more than a quarter of the United States, of what is the modern United States. And no, this was not primitive time. This is modern time. So this isn't something that just happened out of nowhere by accident or by incident. Let's get the grudge.com. This article entitled Comanche, the most powerful Native American tribe in history. Let's get that.
The British settlers who eventually morphed into revolutionaries and became Americans weren't the first people to arrive in the New World or the first to try to conquer it.
So they show here that the British weren't the first ones to try to conquer the United States. Check it out, read.
The Spanish and the French also tried their hands at making America their own. That's why we had to buy the Louisiana Purchase from France.
So France discovered that part of the United States first. And one of the main questions that people have, because notice history books don't talk about the Comanche. They talk about the Louisiana Purchase, but they never talk about the Comanche. The reason why, and one of the main questions that pops into your head, I know the question that I had about the Louisiana Purchase is, why did the French give up the entire west of the United States for so cheap? They basically just gave it to the US. Why did France sell pretty much all of West all of the west of the United States to of North America to the United States for basically nothing. It's because the French knew they couldn't do nothing with it. They had tried to put things on this land for so it's like, listen, we've been trying to build up this part. You're gonna find the reason why they gave it away so cheap is because they weren't able to do anything with the people on it. Read.
French also tried their hands at making America their own. That's why we had to buy the Louisiana Purchase from France and get Florida from Spain via treaty. But
notice they couldn't get Florida either. The Native Americans in Florida, the Spanish couldn't conquer Florida either. Read.
But neither France nor Spain, which were both worldwide imperial superpowers at the time, could make such headway in North America.
The two most powerful imperial superpowers at the time couldn't do anything with this tribe. Both of them. Neither of them could do anything. So they said, you know what? Here, take it. I don't want it no more. I've lost too many troops trying to get this land. Read.
And according to Arthur S.C. Gwen, there was a simple reason their conquest stalled the Comanches.
So it was the Comanche tribe that kept them from conquesting further. This one tribe that was once hunter-gatherers had no warlike tendencies whatsoever in their history stalled not one, but two imperial superpowers from advancing. Oh, make that three because the U.S. couldn't do anything with it either. Read.
By the time the French and the Spanish were trying to claim territory in the plains, the Comanches had evolved into the most capable horsemen in the world. They had adapted conventional weaponry to the horse, and their total focus on waging brutal, violent wars, and have forged them into the most effective and terrifying war machine on the planet. And every time,
check that out. Who was the most effective and terrifying war machine on the planet back when Israel was standing? It was Gad. It was Gad. So the Comanche not only became the most powerful. Now, keep in mind, this is before guns. This is before the Comanche got guns. They were destroying imperial armies, superpowers, France, the US, and Spain with hatchets, bows and arrows, and horses. This is before guns.
That's cool.
It sounds like the tribe of Gad to me. And keep in mind, it's not like they had numbers on their side either. The Comanche weren't numerous. They weren't one of the larger tribes in numbers. Someone actually wrote about having a run-in. They had a run-in with the Comanches, and they had no idea how many there were. They attacked in numbers of 15 to 20, but when people did battle with them, they said that they saw as many as 200 to 300. Sounds like someone familiar, right? Remember, the scriptures say that one of the least captains is 100, and one of the greatest is 1,000. So this is why they were saying, listen, they only attacked. See, the reason why it was so hard to destroy the Comanche is because they would divide themselves into small bases of 15 to 20, and they would attack as such. So if you captured one, you didn't have them all. So these armies were fighting 15 to 20 people, and they were writing that it seemed, they didn't know how many there were, but it seemed like it was 200 to 300 people. Meanwhile, you only got a handful of people that can fit in a tiny closet that was going and wrecking shop. They had became the most effective and terrifying war machine on the planet without firearms. Without firearms. But the Comanche eventually got firearms. So what do you think happened after that? What is it? Go ahead and read the last part. And every time
the European powers tried to fight them, they lost and lost badly.
They lost and they lost badly. Notice that's not in your history books, is it? That's not in your history books, is it? They lost every time the European powers tried to fight the Comanches. They lost and they lost badly. Sounds familiar, right? Sounds like God to me. The Comanche, much like many other North American tribes, never made permanent settlements, unlike their relatives in Central and South America, and other parts of the continent. They dwelt like lions, dominating the terrain and everything on it without much more than themselves. And when I say without much more than themselves, they had a hatchet, a bow and arrow, and a horse. A hatchet, a bow and arrow, and a horse. And eventually they had a gun, firearms, and they had firearms, hatchet, knife, horse. What do you think was happening when they got their hands on some guns? Keep in mind, history writes that they were experts with the use of firearms. So they were just as good with firearms as with everything else. Right? Interesting. How many of you know the only reason why the United States won the Mexican-American War is because of the Comanches? The Comanches had spread the Mexican army so thin, they had nobody to fight the United States. So the Comanche were fighting the French, the Spanish, the United States, and the British, as well as the Mexican army at the same time. Keep in mind, all four are imperial superpowers at the time. Probably the only one that you wouldn't consider a superpower is Mexico, but that's because Mexico wasn't going out looking for wars. But the Comanches stretched their army so thin, keep in mind with 15 to 20 people per battalion, they stretched their army so thin, they didn't have enough left to fight the U.S. That's how powerful the Comanche tribe was. It is deep. They're fighting four imperial superpowers at the same time. And we're winning. Not holding them off, not retreating. They were winning. Remember, it said every time that the Europeans went toe-to-toe with the Comanche tribe, they lost, and they lost badly. Even smoke signals, which all the Native American tribes used, are known to be an Israelite practice as well, to warn others that were far off. How many of you knew that smoke signals were a part of Israelite culture? Let's get it. Judges chapter 20, verse 38.
Judges chapter 20, verse 38. Now that there was an appointed sign between the men of Israel and the liars
in wait,
that they should make a great flame with smoke rise up out of the city. Verse 39. And when the men of Israel retired in the battle, Benjamin began to smite and kill all of the men of Israel, about 30 persons. For they said, surely that the smiting down before us, as in the first battle. Verse 40. But when the flame began to rise up out of the city with a pillar of smoke, the Benjamites looked behind them, and behold, the flame of the city ascended up to heaven.
So they used smoke signals to warn other armies or battalions far off. Right? So it was a common practice. Now keep in mind, a lot of y'all don't know that creating a fire is one thing, but creating a smoke signal is a totally different thing. It's an art. Creating a smoke fire is very difficult. And Israelites commonly use them to warn each other from far off. The Native Americans did the exact same thing. We're going to take another break, have some things to figure out really quickly, but we'll be back in a quick moment. So go ahead. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back in a moment. All right. So now that we've dealt with how the Native American tribes measure up to the battle or war abilities or the war capabilities of the tribe of Gad, now we can get into the curses, how the curses pertain to them, right? So we've examined that the Native Americans were the type of warriors that matched the tribe of Gad perfectly because that's who they are. And as Brother Zephaniah came up and told me during the break, he was like, they don't write in history that guerrilla warfare came from the Native Americans, which is absolutely true. Everybody, you came in, everybody was ready to throw down, right? But now we go into the curses. Native Americans endured innumerable amounts of suffering before and after the Europeans, dating back to the Assyrian captivity. Their history in the U.S., their history with the U.S. is no secret, and the atrocities committed against the tribe of Gad here in America, however, and the history that goes unnoticed and unspoken is their brutal and unfortunate history with Canada and the Indian Act. Right? How many of you know that the Canadians were destroying the Native Americans too? We have a clip. Let's go ahead and run that clip real quick. That short video.
The first Indian residential schools started opening in the 1870s, the beginning of what some have called the darkest chapter in Canadian history.
What took place in residential schools amounts to nothing short of cultural genocide.
By 1920, the Indian Act was amended to make it mandatory for status Indian children to attend residential school. When their parents refused to send them away, police showed up and forcibly took them. It's estimated that 150,000 children were taken from their families and placed in these schools where they were stripped of their culture and their language. The goal was assimilation, to quote, kill the Indian in the child. Thousands of children died, with some estimates saying the mortality rate was as high as 60% in some of the schools. Those who survived have shared horrific stories of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. The last residential school closed in 1996. The impacts of those institutions are still palpable today.
Now, keep in mind what was going on in these residential schools. This is only Canada. We had those here in the US too. So those numbers that they were stating were specifically for Canada. That wasn't including the residential schools that were created and built here in the US as well, right? Where they would take these children and they would first cut their hair and make them and take them out of their native clothing and put them into white's clothing. Why did they do this? Because it was a quote by a man named Richard H. Pratt. He said, a general has said that the only good Indian is a dead one, and the high sanction of his destruction has been an enormous factor in promoting Indian massacres. In a sense, I agree with this sentiment, but only in this, that all the Indian there is in the race should be dead. Kill the Indian in him, save the man.
Wow.
So it was a genocide,
Wow.
but it was more deep than that because it was what you call ethnic cleansing. These children would go into these schools and be physically, sexually, emotionally abused by European men and women, right? During these particular times, right? And keep in mind, the last residential school in Canada closed in 1996, but it wasn't until the 21st century where they were where the final one was closed in the US. So there were still Native American children being held in these camps, even dating back to the 2000s. Right? And today they've turned it around for good to where the Native American community has created boarding schools, because keep in mind, when you create something like a boarding school and you remove children from their households, you're essentially destroying the family dynamic. So not only does the parent become used to not raising their children, but the children are used to not raising are used to the minds of their children not being present. So it destroys. So you had at first you had people taking the Native American children, but after a couple generations, you had Native American parents sending their children.
Wow.
Right? See the mental captivity of it? But the Native American community have created all Native American schools, boarding schools, in which the teachers are Native American, the principals are Native American, and all of the students are Native American, to where they can not only become more powerful and strengthen as a nation, but also to rebuild and strengthen their culture. Let's get let's because a lot of people don't believe that the Native Americans went on slave ships. Let's get brown.edu. We're going to double time it. Colonial enslavement of Native Americans include those who surrendered too. Go ahead and read that real quick.
Native American slavery is a piece of history of slavery that has been glossed over. Fisher said between 1942 and 1880, between 2 and 5.5 million Native Americans were enslaved in the Americas, in addition to 12.5 million African slaves.
So a lot of people believe that it was only blacks enduring slaves here in America when Native Americans were enduring the same slavery with us. So it's thought that, oh yeah, when you had these slaves on plantations, that those are only black people. There were Native Americans on those plantations as well. You can read it here. I have a text here. We're not going to get into it because of time, but it's a book called Black Indians. It shows the relationship between black slaves here in America as well as in Mexico and the natives as well, right? The relationship between the two. How many of you knew that a lot of black slaves that escaped slavery, guess where they went? They went amongst Native American tribes. They were accepted in amongst the Native Americans. So it's not common for a person who is Negro or black to have Native American blood or Native American ties. Because when we left slavery, we were often purchased out of slavery by Native Americans. So the relationship between blacks and Native Americans was always clear, and it was always one of peace. Right? Go ahead and read.
While natives had been forced into slavery and servitude as early as 1636, it was not until King Philip's War that natives were enslaved in large numbers. Fisher wrote in the study, the 1675 to 1676 war pitted Native American leader King Philip, also known as Metacom, and his allies against the English colonial settlers. During the war, New England colonies routinely shipped Native Americans as slaves to Barbados, Bermuda, Jamaica, Azores, Spain, Tangier, and North Africa, Fisher said.
So they were even sent to Africa. They were sent to Barbados, Bermuda, Jamaica. Azores is in Portugal. So they were sent to Portugal. They were sent to Spain and other areas in Europe as well as Africa. Oh, but they didn't go on slave ships, did they? You got to get on a ship in order to get from the United States to Barbados or to Bermuda. You got to get on a ship to do that. And you got to be in chains in order to be captive, being sent to Barbados and Bermuda. So yes, they endured the same curses that we did. In fact, they endured the exact same curses that we did at the exact same time. So how can you say, oh, they didn't go through the curses of Deuteronomy 28 when they were on the same plantations as us picking cotton? Right? Let's get Wikipedia. Slavery among Native Americans in the United States.
The slave trade of Native Americans lasted until around 1730. It gave rise to a series of devastating wars among the tribes, including the Yamasee War. The Indian Wars of the early 18th century, combined with the increasing importation of African slaves, effectively ended the Native American slave trade by 1750. Colonialists found that Native American slaves would easily escape as they knew the country. The wars cost the lives of numerous colonial slave traders and disrupted their early societies. The remaining Native American groups banded together to face the Europeans from a position of strength.
So not only were Native Americans escaping, they were escaping with African slaves as well. So y'all thought Harriet Tubman was the only one liberating slaves. Native Americans that were enslaved would escape, and they would escape with people. They would leave with people, help other people escape. So slave owners were getting ticked off because they're like, we can't find them because they know the land better than us.
That makes sense.
Read.
Many surviving Native American peoples of the Southeast strengthened their loose coalitions of language groups and joined confederacies such as the Choctaw the Creek and the
The Choctaw Creek and Catawba.
Catawba for protection.
So they started banding together. Instead of being separate tribes, they started uniting themselves against the United States. Read.
Native American women were at risk for rape, whether they were enslaved or not. During the early colonial years, settlers were disproportionately male. They turned to Native women for sexual relationships, but Native American and African enslaved women suffered rape and sexual harassment by the male slaveholders and other white men.
Oh, sisters, y'all thought y'all were the only ones. Our Native American Gadite sisters were in the same position. Our Issacharite sisters in Mexico were in the same position. Our Simeonite brothers and sisters in the island of Hispaniola, same position. Right? But nah, we got a monopoly on captivity and slavery. Nah, nobody went through what we went through but us. History says otherwise. History says otherwise. So the tribe of Gad, in conclusion, can be found today in North America, the United States, in Canada, Alaska. Now, the reason why I say Alaska is separate from the United States because they're not directly connected. You got to cross through Canada, or you got to cross over a particular river in order to get to Alaska from the United States. So that's why I have it separate. North America, the United States, Canada, Alaska, and tribes in Japan known as the Ainu. A lot of people don't know. The Ainu in Japan are the same as the Native Americans here in the United States. We have a picture of them, actually. Go ahead and pull that up. We're going to start running through these pictures. This is a brother from Japan, the Ainu tribe in Japan. You should be able to see it on the screen. Looks just like a Native American. And it also turns out that all of their customs are the same as Native Americans as well. If you, we have another picture of an Ainu brother. Look at his hair. Look at his beard. Right? Not to mention, these people single-handedly started and ended wars in China. So they were just as skilled warriors as our brothers and sisters over here in the United States, which is why they were being forcibly recruited into armies in the Eastern world. Didn't know that, did you? Right? And you also, we have a picture of Sitting Bull, a Sioux tribal chief. The Apache. We have the Apache as well. Now, if you look at them, I mean, and I also want to keep in mind that I also want to keep in the forefront of your mind is that all Native Americans do not look the same. They don't all look the same. Because of ethnic cleansing, which they endured by the Europeans, a lot of them appear to be white. But remember, who does the bloodline fall through? The father, right? Which is why we can't judge people based off of their skin complexion. There's a lot of brothers and sisters, even at the Native American boarding schools today, that appear white, but their parents look straight up Native American. One of their parents looks straight up Native American. Right? It's by ethnic cleansing, the same things that we went through mentally, where we were taught to desire those of lighter skin. We're taught to desire to be lighter skin, colorism. The same impediments that are placed on us mentally are placed on them as well. Also, when you keep in mind the forced assimilation of people, the 5 civilized tribes, where it was you be like us, you marry into us, or you die. So a lot of Native American tribes were forced to assimilate. Not assimilate, ethnic cleansing. Right? You even have Native Americans amongst the Polynesian islands. A lot of people don't know that. There were slave trades of Native Americans to the Polynesian islands, not to mention their travel from, there was travel and connection between the those in the Western Hemisphere and the South Pacific. There was trade between those islands, right? You have Native Americans in Spain and in other parts of Europe. There are a lot of them in the Caribbean islands. You have many in parts of Africa. For example, the tribe that they claim is the Zulu tribe in South Africa that they claim to be the tribe of Gad instead of the Native Americans may just be the tribe of Gad with the Native Americans. Because we showed a picture, they look the exact same. They have the exact same traditions. Prophecies fall the same way. And there just so happened to be a slave trade of Native Americans to Africa. That, right? And some still remain in the Middle East and in Eurasia through migration. Right? Because remember, you had some that stayed, and you had some that went to the New World. Right? You had some that stayed and some that went to the New World. Not all Native Americans went to the Western world, people. Right? Notable men from the tribe of Gad is the prophet Elijah and King Jehu and all of his sons. A lot of people, y'all didn't know that Elijah was a Gadite, did you? Yep, Elijah was from the tribe of Gad, right? And next week, we're going to be going into breaking down the tribe of Asher, right? All praise to the Most High, everybody. All praise to the Most High. Right? Now, there's some more sources that I wanted to get in this particular lesson, but what we're going to do is I'm going to compile all of them, and we'll have it put in, and I'll get with the elder about putting it in the description for those who need all of these sources. They will be there for you. We had to sort of double time it, but Ra'awaban, awesome job, brother. Awesome job. This is Brother Ra'ah's first time reading, so y'all give him a hand as well. And it won't be his last. Right? So, you know, this is what it's all about, right? There's a scripture there was a song that I was listening to this morning when I was doing my worship and my prayer that Ra'ash Yasharallah did, where it says, "When Israel shouts," right? That's a powerful song by the Most that comes straight from the Most High, because the power that the children of Israel have when we not only know our identity, but know who we are according to each other, and also know the name of the Most High. How many of you know that that power lies in the tongue? That there's power in the tongue. So when you speak and when you shout, right, and when you give the Most High praise with your mouth, that's power. Remember, all we had to do was shout, and the walls of Jericho came down. All Judah had to do was shout, and all the women, babies aborted, and half of the army died, and the other ones ran. And yeah, some people who was paralyzed with fear, and all he had to do was shout. He ain't even laid a hand on anybody yet. Right? This highlights this. The scriptures say that the end cannot come until the gospel is preached throughout the four corners of the earth, and to the Jews first, and then to the Gentile. If we don't know who the Israelites are, how can we go and teach them? How can we know where to find them? Right? This is the point of these lessons. So when you see someone on the street, when you see somebody somewhere, you can say, "Hey, you're from the tribe of such and such." Have a conversation. The word of mouth is still the best way to spread information. It's still the best way to spread this truth. If you know who you're looking at and you know who you're talking to, you can impart truth unto them and contribute. Do your part in sending this work across the four corners of the earth. Khan? All praise to the Most High, everybody. All praise to the Most High. Do we have any questions or comments? Any questions, any comments? All right, we have a comment. Kendra Gamble, "I just finished watching an awesome Sabbath lesson from the Gathering of Christ Church. Y'all got the same truth. Y'all got a new all praise to the Most High, sister. All praise to the Most High. Everybody give her a hand. Right? All praise to the Most High. I mean, you know, I put it like this. The Most High doesn't work with just one person. He works in a lot of people. Right? It's the same spirit. Remember, the scriptures say we must all speak the same thing, right? We all speaking the same thing, same spirit, one baptism, one God, right? Even though we may be in different places or be operating under a different name, it does not change the fact that the truth remains the same. The spirit remains the same, right? Note that Christ wasn't telling people to stop following John the Baptist. John wasn't telling people to stop following Christ. They were teaching the same thing and going in the same direction. People who got baptized by John got baptized by Christ too. And vice versa, right? So I mean, all praises to the Most High. That's what it's all about, right? And even in situations where Barnabas and Paul were not very fond of each other personally. Barnabas has some personal issues with Paul and vice versa. But guess what? They respected each other's work. They respected each other's work, and they were both speaking the same thing. You don't got to be best friends with somebody that teach the same thing. Just because you disagree and you don't like somebody personally, don't mean that y'all can't speak the same doctrine. Be operating under the same God. There's a lot of people I don't vibe with, but guess what? If that person is teaching the truth of the Most High, Hebrews chapter 6, verse 1, I don't got a problem with you. Bless you, brother. Right? So all praises to the Most High, everybody. I hope everyone was blessed and edified by this particular lesson. Like I said, there was a lot of sources that I wanted to get into that I didn't have an opportunity to, but in the coming weeks, we're going to be able to get into those because we have a lot of people that are scattered throughout parts of Asia that we didn't get into, like the Malaysians, some tribes in Malaysia, some tribes in Indonesia that are from the tribes of Israel as well. And we're going to be getting into that history and different things as well. So, like I said, all praise to the Most High. This is what it's all about, brother. You did an awesome job today. So we are going to start fellowshipping and we're going to wish you all a blessed Sabbath. We're going to go ahead and eat because I'm starving, but that's what happened though. You do this work. Elder, do you have anything that you want to put out before we wrapped up? All right. So baptisms. All right. So our next round of baptisms, we just completed our baptisms not too long ago. Make sure you go on our Facebook and check out that video, share it. It was an amazing baptism. But our next round of baptisms will be coming up next month in the month of November on the second Sabbath, right? So second Saturday will be our next round of baptisms. If you would like to get baptized, go to our website, housejudahfellowship.org, and send an email to the elders to go ahead and start getting that process started on being baptized. All right. So if we have nothing else, I would like to say, bless you all. Stay in prayer. We are in the last days, so stay in prayer and continue to meditate and fast so that you can have direction under the Holy Spirit in these last days. And with that, I would like to wish you all a blessed Sabbath. Shalom.